Okay, hello everyone. Got quite a busy afternoon, so I think I might get started. There'll still be a few more people dialing in, I should imagine. So welcome to our final conference of Community Energy Power. Looking down the list, it's great to see participants from a range of organisations. We've got Dan McCallum there, looking very smart. I think he's had a trim since he spoke at our first conference. Just Phil Watson was taking us a walk a minute ago on his phone, I think. Really good to see you all, and particularly those of you who joined the AGM this morning. So thanks for dialing in again today. So during the fortnight, we've had 25 online events, 6 launches, including 2 reports, a couple of podcasts, case studies. We've had Twitter takeovers. So for those of you who haven't come across that before, that's where we gave some of our members control over our Twitter account for them to post about what they're doing and their opinion on what was happening during Community Energy Fortnight. We had 22 blogs. And we had 5 videos and lots of interaction on social media if you've been following the 2 hashtags, which I think is CEF2020 and hashtag Harness Our Power, which given we've been in lockdown and everything else going on, it's just incredible. So thank you so much to everyone who took part. If you did miss any of that, Gina will be sending a wrap-up newsletter this week, so you can catch up on any webinars that were recorded, have a look through some of the opinion pieces and so on. And the agenda for this afternoon has been put together based on the discussions that's been happening in the fortnight. So that's why the agenda has been quite late last minute, and we're testing out some new approaches as well this afternoon. So in the first session, we're going to hear from our event sponsors, Coop Community Energy, and our supporting sponsors, Northern Powergrid and Electricity North West. Then the second session, we're going to delve in and explore how to advance an inclusive energy transition for climate justice. And then the final session might be slightly chaotic and has been appropriately called the 5-minute fortnight frenzy. So we're going to be showcasing some of the highlights in the last couple of weeks. So we'll see how that goes. And then as a way to make up for us not being able to catch up and network as we normally would do as part of our annual conference, we've put a session on at the end of the day called the Cooperator's Arms. So for anyone who would like to catch up or have further discussion around topics of their choice, please do use the chat function and put forward any topics you'd like to talk about, if you'd like to host a room or if you'd just like a general catch up. Of course, we're aware that it's the end of a day and people have other commitments, so it's not mandatory, it's just there for anyone who does want to use that opportunity to catch up. And please, throughout the afternoon, do use the chat function to share your thoughts, put forward any questions, that we can make sure that this afternoon is as interactive as possible. And although this event is to wrap up Community Energy Fortnight, it is only the start of the discussions and the action as we move towards a post-COVID plan for the sector, as well as building up to climate talks next year as well. And we've already started some discussions on that with some partners. So anyone particularly interested in getting involved in our activities leading up to COP26, do get in touch with us. But for now, I think we'll just get stuck in. So I'd like to hand over to our first speaker, Tom from Co-op Community Energy.
Hi, Emma. Thank you very much. Yeah, hi, everyone. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. As Emma mentioned, I'm going to keep it brief. The aim today is just to announce the recipients of the first Community Energy Fund. Just to give you a bit of a background on it, I mentioned this in the first part of the conference at the beginning of the fortnight. The fund is based on every domestic customer who switches to the Co-op Energy Community Power Tariff, which is a domestic 100% renewable tariff entirely backed by generation from community-owned renewable generation across the UK. For every customer that switches to that tariff, we contribute into the fund. The aim is to distribute the fund twice a year. This year, this is the first time we've done this, so this is sort of hot off the press. and we aim to repeat it in December. And there's some information at the end of the presentation on what that looks like and how you can go about applying for the fund. So the first thing I'd like to do is thank you to the panel. We decided it was a good idea to bring together an external panel made up of Emma, Nicholas and Robert from Community Energy England, Community Energy Scotland and Community Energy Wales, respectively. It was really interesting to hear their insights, and we're very grateful for them committing their time to reading through the applications and discussing where we thought the money would be best spent. As always with a fund, and appreciate the values of the fund are relatively small, but we hope with over time the more people that switch to the community power tariff, that the fund will grow. Yeah, we appreciate their time and their commitment in helping us out with this. So all of the applicants have been contacted, so this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone who's part of those groups. But to run through the successful applicants, the first is Awal Amantawi, and I see Dan's logged on, and Dan's around. So they have planned to use the funds to develop a resource pack for teachers or home teachers, for students, particularly for use during lockdown, during COVID-19. And this resource pack, they'll tailor it to different levels, different abilities. They'll link it to online portals showing their generation from their solar and their wind sites. And I think the really exciting part is that they can continue to use these packs after lockdown and follow up on them by going into the schools, continuing their outreach work, and inviting school visits to their generation sites. So congratulations to Dan and everyone at Awal Amantawi. The second is South Hill Community Energy, and this is a project to enable the grazing of sheep at their solar farm. And this is to replace the existing manual mowing that happens, which is sort of fairly carbon intensive, and it compacts the ground underneath the panels, and there's a need to keep all of the grass underneath the panels at a reasonable length. And the funds are going to help towards investing in water troughs, piping, and a solar water pump, which they can use to extract water from the river. So quite an innovative idea and quite an innovative way of using sheep to keep on top of all of the growth underneath the panels and around the site. And last but not least, we have Brighton Energy Co-op. So I thought this really speaks to the time at the moment where they'll be using the fund to pay the national living wage to either school leavers or recent graduates who want to come in and learn about running an environmental business. We've been told the fund will pay for around just shy of 290 hours work, about 7 weeks of work split over several different internship posts. And I think it sort of spoke to the current environment where there's a need for young people to learn the industry, to develop their skills after graduating, and particularly in an environment where job prospects could be not what everyone would hope after leaving education. I think this is a really timely and very interesting project. So there's another quote from Damien there. So congratulations to all three of those applicants. For the other applicants, I believe Ryan has contacted everyone and will be providing a bit more feedback. But so just onwards to the next round. So as I say, there'll be another pot in December this year. Again, it will be a minimum similar value, so 3 pots of £2,500. But obviously, as more people switch to the tariff, the bigger that pot becomes. It's open to all community energy affiliates of Co-op Energy, the domestic supplier. And anyone who wasn't successful this time round can reapply in the next round. So it'd be great to see applications from those groups again. If you are interested in becoming an affiliate of Co-op Energy and bidding into this fund, and you think this could support some work that your group are either considering or already undertaking but need support with, then please contact Ryan. I'll have his permission to put his email address up on screen, so please drop Ryan an email, or ask event sponsors, ask the event organisers for contact details if you don't make a note of it now. Please feel free to reach out. It would be great to hear from you, and we look forward to running the next round later on this year. So that's it for me. I'll just, as I say, I'll keep it very brief. If you have any questions, there's we don't have the Q&A function this time, but please put it in the chat. Yeah, look forward to listening to the rest of the afternoon. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks very much, Tom. As Tom said, do put any questions, thoughts in the chat. We'll also send out further information as well after the event. So there is a Q&A session after the next couple of speakers as well, so opportunity for discussion then. I'd like to introduce now Helen from Electricity Northwest, who's going to talk about how they are supporting communities to harness our power.
Good afternoon, everybody. I trust you can all hear me and see my screen. So, as Emma said, my name's Helen. I work for Electricity Northwest. I'm the Community Energy Manager there, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our strategy and particularly how we're working with communities to help them harness their power. So I'm just going to work out how to move my slides on, which should be straightforward. There we go. Sorry, for those of you that don't know, just a quick introduction to Electricity Northwest. We're a distribution network operator, so a DNO, sometimes known as a DSO, and we own and operate the electrical distribution system in the northwest of England. So our role as relevant to community energy is connections, contracts for flexibility services, making sure the network's got enough capacity and is being developed for the future growth in demand for low carbon technologies. I've been in post now for nearly 3 years, and as part of my responsibility is to develop our strategy for how we're supporting community energy. And as part of that, when I first started, we developed a definition, and now I know community energy means different things to different people, but we did this very much to aid conversations with stakeholders and customers, so we were very clear about what it was we were talking about. I think the main point here is community energy. We see it, and I think our stakeholders and customers see it very much about being embedded in the local community where there is control and benefit for the local community. Local energy has very similar features, but doesn't necessarily have that same local community control and benefit. From our point of view, they are similar types of projects because they're distributed generation trying to connect to our network with very similar issues. So we've just recently published our latest State of the Sector report, which we've done in partnership with Community Energy England alongside the national report. And as you can see here, the distribution of community-owned generation across our region. In total, there's 17.5 megawatts of community-owned generation, 12.5 megawatts of wind, 2.8 megawatts of hydro, and 1.8 megawatts of PV. You can also see that groups last year reported that in 2020, so in this year, they were going to be developing 15 projects across those range of different subject areas. I think it's too early to say what the impacts of COVID are going to be, but I am aware that some of those projects are experiencing delays, especially where site visits are required to move them forward and people haven't been able to get onto site and go and meet contractors at the time they were expecting to in the last couple of months. So we devised our strategy in response to stakeholder feedback, and these are the top three areas where stakeholders suggested and we agreed that we should take action and focus our efforts. So as you can see, rather unsurprisingly, customers want better access to us and easier ways to engage with us, and we've done a lot of work around that area. Regulation is also key to the industry, something that we're working every day, and an area where customers felt we could potentially work and help with. So we focus on that area. And then also finance. So our role and contribution to business plans around the cost of grid connection. But also we've launched a seed fund, which we've run for the last couple of years. And it's that is what I'm going to talk you through, a couple of examples of the projects that we've funded under that. So our seed fund is called our Empowering Our Communities Fund. We launched it 2 years ago, and it's to help community groups and communities addressed some of the issues that they said that they were facing when we asked them where we should target our support, and some of them in particular around capacity and focusing that at developing new ways of working post-FITs, but also around energy efficiency and working with hard to reach or fuel poor communities. Last year we combined our Community Energy Fund with our Vulnerable Customers Fund, which is how we target support at those customers that aren't necessarily engaging with the support that's available for them during a power cut, or support that's available for them to help with energy efficiency advice. So we've combined both of those funds to make it easier for people to see the route in to get funding from us. The funding is available to a wide range of organisations. We want it to be as inclusive as possible, and the criteria are quite broad because we don't really want to be prescriptive about what the project should be about, but it's more about what we're looking for, and then groups can come to us with their ideas. And this is a list of the projects that we've funded in the last couple of years, and as you can see, it's a spread of different types of subjects, quite a few on energy efficiency, but other projects in there, such as Oldham Community Power. They already had some community-owned PV that they'd installed, but we funded the provision of some electronic displays to enable the schools and the classes within the schools to see what the community renewable energy is doing to spread the impact of that project within those communities. There's also a spread across our region, so if you know the Northwest, you'll be able to see that they've come from the different parts of our region, so all the way up in Cumbria and right down to Greater Manchester. So I'm just going to talk through a couple of these projects just to give you a few examples of how we've been able to support communities in our region. So Burneyside is a small village on the outside of Cumbria, near Kendal. The group's been established a number of years, and last year they installed 430 kilowatts of solar panels across 5 separate sites in partnership with James Cropper and Cumbria Action for Sustainability, and they've used their community benefit fund to install a further 20 kilowatts on a local school. The project that we have funded is for them to expand their activities into community owned assets on a new build housing estate, which is being developed on the outskirts of the village with a local landowner and a developer. Our funding has been used to develop the business model for how a community group could own those assets, and so far it's resulted in the group being able to successfully bid for some further funding from the Next Generation Fund to develop the detailed commercial models for how that would work. A key part of the project is making the new developments acceptable to the village. The village is quite a small village and the new developments are quite controversial, and the fact that community energy as part of the new developments has helped make, has played a positive role in making the new development more acceptable. In addition, it's planned that the community benefit fund from the community owned assets on the new build will be used for the benefit of the whole village, and there is some households within the village that experience fuel poverty, so it will be targeted to help support those households. The next project is Burnley Boys and Girls Club. It was established in 1899. It's located in the centre of Burnley. It has around 360 members. It's mainly targeted at young people. It gives them an opportunity to go and take part in sports and arts and crafts activities and somewhere to go after school and in the holidays. The aim of their project, which is called Eco Warriors, was led by the young people, and it was to improve the energy efficiency of their building, but also to train and empower the young people to give energy efficiency advice to their local community. It's in a quite deprived part of Burnley, so there was potentially some households who could benefit from that. We've helped support the project by running a workshop to help give the young people some information about energy efficiency and how households can save energy. And they have taken that information and they've run clubs during half-term and Christmas holidays where they've invited local householders in and shared their information about how they could be more energy efficient. We've also invited some of the young people into our training academy to give them information about the training that's available and the careers opportunities within the electricity industry. The centre manager has told us that a lot of the children there have quite chaotic home lives, and that by coming into the club they've got a safe haven, and this project has really helped to empower them and give them confidence to go out and talk to people in the local community and to have options about what to do in the future. And the final project I'm going to talk about is the Kashmiri Youth Project. This is an organisation based in the centre of Rochdale, which was founded over 40 years ago to support people who had moved from South Asia, predominantly from the Kashmir region of Pakistan. And they were aware that people in their local community had a really low understanding of energy efficiency and how what measures they could put in place to save money and save energy. So the funding that we've given them has enabled them to develop bilingual energy efficiency advice. They've employed a project worker who goes out into the community, and they've run a number of events. They've broadcasted on a community radio. They've done bilingual podcasts, and they've done visits to different other community centres and made leaflets and social media just to try and outreach into a community that weren't previously engaging on this topic. So that was just a quick whistle-stop tour of 3 examples of how we're trying to support our communities. I just wanted to finish by saying we're going to relaunch our fund in September for anybody in our region who is interested in applying. And also, if you want to keep up to date with our activities, please sign up for our newsletter on our website. And that was it for me today. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. That was great. Some really interesting projects there. We'll also send a link for people to sign up to your newsletter in our wrap-up stuff afterwards. Great. So next on to Onda from Northern Powergrid, who is going to talk about a socially inclusive transition to distribution system operation.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can see my screen now.
Yeah, it's just come up.
Fantastic. Thank you. So while I figure out how to change my slides as well. Yeah, my name is Onda Baumerte. I'm sustainability manager at Northern Powergrid, and one of my roles is being the contact person for community energy within the company. Like Helen, we and their company, we are a regional electricity distribution network operator serving the areas of North East, Yorkshire and Northern Lincolnshire. We're Ofgem regulated, technology agnostic network operator, which we serve quite a diverse area, both geographically, economically and socially. And today I'm going to talk about what our future role might bring. The energy landscape in the UK and energy system in the UK is changing, and that is a result of a number of drivers. As you can see on my slide, it's democratization, decentralization, decarbonization, digitalization. So most often we talk about decarbonization, and we as a network operator see ourselves as being a key enabler for that. But really, a lot of these changes go hand in hand. Also, often we talk about what are the technological solutions, what are the financial solutions, what plans we should set in place to adjust and adapt. But less often we talk about the social aspect. We know that all of this, all of these drivers and all of these changes will impact everyone very differently. We talk about climate change as an environmental catastrophe and environmental emergency, but rarely we touch on equally important difference in how it affects every single one of us, and it's a social challenge and social catastrophe very much as well. So as a network operator, we are also changing to adapt, and we see our role changing to the distribution system operator in the future, with already seeing a lot of low carbon generation, more local generation being connected to our network, and a lot of smart technology being deployed. And we see that in the future we will become even custodian of a local, more smarter, flexible system that matches the local renewable generation with the local demand, and does it more dynamically. And most importantly, that it allows us cost effectively use every single unit of the renewable generation produced in the region. And for this, we think that the social fairness and fair transition is really key. So we make sure that everyone goes on this journey together with the energy system, and nobody's left behind. So when we talk about consumer social inclusivity and consumer vulnerability, today there are three roles that we have in this. One is tailored support in power cuts for customers who might be dependent on electrically powered equipment, medical equipment. Also reducing vulnerability in the future, so making sure that there are energy efficiency solutions and innovation that facilitates more effective solutions and support for vulnerable customers, and also giving our customers a voice through advocating and making sure that there are considerations made in the energy policy that serve them effectively. And as I mentioned, the energy system is changing, and we expect this role to change for us as well. And in parallel to working on our plan for diesel transition that was published in December 2019, we have undertaken a significant amount of research and consultation with stakeholders, including our external advisory group, or social issues expert group, and NEA, on how do we facilitate social inclusivity as a network operator. So this has allowed us to come up with a 7-point plan, and these have been tested and adjusted and changed based on our stakeholder feedback. So to elaborate more on some parts of it, so you can read more about it on these links given on the slide. But I just wanted to touch on a couple of things in this slot and during this presentation. So number 5, we see our role in understanding long-term distribution impact and advocating fairness. So this is an evolving and ongoing role for advocating for people in our region and influencing the energy policy so that it is inclusive, and testing new developments and new innovations to make sure they are fit and they are adequate for supporting the vulnerable customers. And then supporting a local greener, cheaper electricity supply is something we talk about a lot as being a key enabler and facilitating that. But we also know that there is a lot of distributional impacts on who can and when they can switch to clean energy, clean generation as well. And local authorities are now developing their local strategies for decarbonization. And over 2/3 of local authorities in our region as well have announced climate emergency, as I'm aware, and they will have done in most places in the country. And they're actively looking at these plans and how to facilitate that locally. And we know that community energy groups do this as well. And in doing that, they bring not only low carbon benefits, not only economic benefits, but also social benefits, as they're often the ones that facilitate fuel poverty alleviation and help reach the vulnerable customers in their area. So there are a number of benefits kind of rippling out of local projects. And here we see our role working together with these stakeholders to facilitate that these projects, incentives, and local plans do reach everyone and do help everyone along on the journey of decarbonization and digitalization, if you like. And we've also commissioned the regional state of the sector report, which we'll be publishing shortly. And this leads me nicely to our community energy engagement strategy, which has already been published. So recognizing all the number of benefits that community energy groups bring to our region, they do help facilitate low carbon technology uptake and reach everyone and generate local benefits that extend beyond technology. We're committed to support these projects and doing so with effective communication, effective engagement, knowledge building, and also advocating for these groups and amplifying their voice with the government, with the regulator, to make sure they can continue doing this and make sure that we have socially inclusive transition. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Onda. So yeah, really interesting insight there from Northern Powergrid. Really nice to see that social aspect being looked at as well as the energy aspect. So just looking in the chat, just to flag that Dan McCallum from Ayling has offered to share information on what they're doing relating to a trial approach with Newport Council, focusing on rooftop solar sites, so around a new portal spec. So if anyone wants more details about that, we could give Dan a chance. Dan, do you want to say something actually about that, to explain it a little bit better than what I just did? If you are there, Dan, you may have nipped off for a coffee.
No, I'm here. Can you hear me, Emma?
Yes, yes, can.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're looking to develop a portal, you know, based around solar panels, which shows sort of generation and also on-site consumption. Also looking at other energy, you know, gas and water as well, use on site. And I've seen a couple of other portals that do similar things. And we're looking to make it sort of interactive as well, to kind of sort of set challenges and games, etc., within the portal. There's a company that have been working with Newport Council and have come up with a sort of prototype previously, which was meant to be really good. So I'm keen to develop that. If anyone else out there has got other examples that they think are really good, then please, yeah, do send us links, because there obviously is a lot going on. I've seen the schools, Solar for Schools portals, which sort of looks at very much at the solar panel aspect of their sites, which was good, but doesn't it's not interactive. We're kind of wondering as well about, for sort of new schools that might be interested in getting solar panels, whether they could log on to the portal and sort of perhaps put their roof area on and see if they could, you know, what solar generation in theory they might be able to get. So anyone else that's done similar stuff, please do email me, dan@owl.coop. Sort of happy to make this sort of open access, if we can, moving forward. Thanks.
That's great, thanks, Dan. Whilst people are thinking about questions for our speakers, I'm going to take Chair's prerogative and ask a couple of questions now, I think. I think maybe starting with Tom, and something that, you know, we've been discussing for quite a long time now as a sector, and there was various talk around the local electricity bill, but generally in terms of supply, the future vision for community energy for us is a whole energy systems approach, so trying to bring it all together. How do you see the future of kind of that supply side going, and having to bring together those different technologies if we're going to scale up and be more ambitious as a sector?
Yeah, I think so. Particularly with local supply, it's something I mentioned on the first conference. Actually, it's probably one of those subjects that I've had more debate over with more people than anything else. And I think it's something that you know, I sort of apply the thinking of strong opinions loosely held to this, as it's something that I change my mind on quite a bit. But I think the benefit of the type of network that we have is that we operate within a national system, and the idea of local supply within that national system, I'm not sure if that works for someone who doesn't live near a renewable station or specifically a community-owned generation site. You know, what happens if I live in a city centre and I want to support community energy, but I live 100 miles from the nearest generation project? I think that's something that we need to bear in mind. That said, I think if local supply from local generation can encourage people to become more engaged with energy supply, which is always one of the biggest problems with the supply market, is such a small percentage of people look to switch and pay attention to their energy bills and look and see if they can save money or if they can source power from renewable generation, then it has to be a good thing. And if it improves local economies by keeping the investment local and the supply local, then obviously that has to be a good thing. But my thinking at the moment is I sort of prefer looking at the UK as a whole and how can we interact with, you know, whether there are opportunities for community groups to pool their power across the UK, and you know, that's one of the things that we were trying to achieve with the community power tariff is you know, all of these stations, when it's not windy in the north of England, it might be in the south and sunny and vice versa, and can we get a bigger benefit from bringing all of these generation sites together? So it's a subject that I like discussing, and I'm happy to, you know, to have that conversation with anyone who's interested in taking it up.
Right. Thank you, Tom. And just say our vision is for there to be community energy in every community. So soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Helen, so just thinking about some of the really interesting topics that come through as part of the Empowering Our Communities Fund. So Burnside in particular is looking at that relationship with housing associations, developers and so on. Are you seeing any those sorts of differing trends coming through over the past 2 or 3 years, like more of those partnership projects? And kind of, do you see that? What do you think of the opportunities, or is there more we should be doing in the sector to be helping to kickstart those sorts of partnerships?
With a very similar project has received, well, a similar type of project has received funding in the 2019 cohort of Empowering Our Communities, in that the Loon Valley Community Trust are looking at how to extend the existing community owned power from Lancaster co-housing to some new build, and they're looking at the options around local supply. So linking back to what Tom was talking about on local supply, is what we're seeing is that to make these projects work and to make them financially viable, our stakeholders are telling us that you need to be able to link local customers with local generation. Now, we don't necessarily have a strong view or any view on how that's done. We've just heard from stakeholders that that's an issue, and that is a consistent theme that has been coming through over the last few years, and one of the things that people have asked for funding to look at, and specifically where you've got generation that's got capacity and you've got new build and you're trying to link that together. And another theme that's coming through is trying to work out how all electric housing will work, energy efficient all electric housing combined with community energy, how that will work. And we're supporting projects that we're not funding, that where housing associations or local authorities are looking at either doing new build all electric housing or trying to retrofit a lot of low carbon technology into existing social housing to try and get the benefits of that to their tenants.
Okay.
So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does. It's just really interesting. It's just, obviously, the sorts of organisations that apply to you, we understand our membership. It's nice to see what those broader trends are and if there are any kind of further opportunities. So that's great. Thanks. Onda, one of the things that came up this morning in our annual general meeting was the need for us to do more around supporting regional networks and to drive growth in areas that there is less community energy. And as we know, Yorkshire and North East, there is less community energy activity. And I know that you held an event about this, I think it was last week. What were the key themes coming out of your event around really driving forward that community energy? And I'm assuming that you and your colleagues have had quite a lot of thoughts in terms of your role within that. Is there any lessons that you can share with some of the other regions?
Yeah, I think, thank you. I think there were a lot of interesting things that came out of the webinar, and to be fair, we're still processing that because we had quite a lot of interesting engagement there. Yes, you're right. We had a webinar last week to talk about our community energy engagement strategy, as well as a wider subject of how we're preparing our business plan for the next price control period, and how we could work with community energy to make it better and make it work for them, and continue this ongoing engagement. So I think there is a key role, like you're saying, supporting regional networks and regional projects, and there are some things that we can do to do that, to facilitate that. I think we also saw quite a lot of interest in the local supply, as speakers before me have said. So that is an ongoing and still continue to be a hot topic. I would probably say that that is something that we also recognize. There's a lot of benefits locally from that approach, but we do need to make sure that that doesn't affect some people disproportionately, and it doesn't drive up the bills of other customers in a Islamic or as a system, and enabling that when it's happening. I think the other things that came out of it were quite a lot of interest in projects that have been developed, and I think, like you say, there's quite a lot of opportunities for knowledge exchange there, and potentially that will help our region as well.
Great. Thank you. We have another question actually for you, Onda, but I think the other speakers might want to respond as well. So from David Stern, as a DNO or a distribution network operator, would you prefer to see communities self-consuming or selling their generation to an energy supplier?
Right, as a DNO, we are a technology and solution agnostic body with a regional reach, if you like. So I wouldn't say that we have a preference in this. It is what serves the community best, and obviously looking at that fairness and decarbonization aspect, what does reach those targets best. It is not really for us to say what we would prefer in this scenario.
Okay. Helen, Tom, do you want to make any comments on that?
I would support what Anda's saying, but also just to say I've only worked in a DNO for 3 years and I'm not an engineer, but what I have learnt is that what solutions suit the grid are very location specific, because it's based on the engineering requirements and the capacity demand in that local area. So you wouldn't get even if you asked an engineer for an honest answer, you wouldn't get a one answer for the entire network anyway, because it's very much based on the local demands. And can I jump on to Debbie's question, or do you want to, Tom?
Do you want to read it out, Helen, in that case, in case
Debbie's asked that broadband is now believed to be a vital utility and has public funds to improve the speed to rural communities, and electricity is also considered vital, but there's no public funds available for reinforcement. So how can you engage DNOs and Ofgems on that? And I just wanted to point out the targeted charging review, which is Ofgem's process for reviewing how grid reinforcement is paid for and how the costs are shared out between, whether they're shared out between current customers or future customers. So that's how to engage DNOs on Ofgem on that issue. But I do appreciate it's not straightforward or easy to do, and we have produced a number of webinars to try and help and guidance and briefing notes to try and help explain what it means to people and how to engage on that.
Thanks, Helen. And yeah, targeted charging review is not an easy thing to grasp. We can send around a link if anyone wants to learn more to our response to the previous consultation, but I think it's something that, yeah, it's going to be rumbling on with them for a while. just thinking about in terms of the theme of today is very much around people and you know, how we move forward. And obviously Onda was talking about the social inclusive transition. I guess one of the things really for community energy to make sure it has a core role going forward post-COVID as part of the broader Black Lives Matter protests and climate protests and so on is really, we need to get better at really demonstrating that broader value that community energy brings. And one of the ways that we can do that is by quantifying social value. And it's something we've debated on and off with Ofgem for a while, but have you as speakers thought about this? Have you kind of got any thoughts going forward of how as a sector we can get better at social value, at demonstrating social value rather? We're very good at the impact itself, and kind of what your role could be in supporting us doing that. Does anyone want to volunteer to go first? I know it's not an easy answer.
I will provide a brief answer if I may. I think absolutely it's very important. I think in many cases and quite often people do understand quantified values better than just recognizing there's a value or a benefit in general. It's often really important to quantify environmental or social benefits. Not to say that the monetary value captures all of it, but it's always very relevant to view things in kind of scale and proportion. And we know that £1 of investment does generate more pounds of invest in social and environmental value, but how much exactly is that? So we've, for that reason, we, as a first step, Community Energy related, we've looked at the regional state of the sector report to quantify that in our area and to see what is the social value at present, what is the environmental value at present, recognizing that we've had less community energy activity, of course, in our region, but then we set and we know what it is today, we can have a look at how we can multiply that and grow that locally. And from Helen's presentation, I see that they have done something very similar. So there is information on what it is at the moment.
Okay, thanks, Onda. Anyone else? Helen or Tom?
I think just to echo what you were saying, Emma, I think one of the benefits of this role that I have, and I'm very lucky to do it, is that I get to speak to and have been out to when I could go out and about or Zoom called with quite a few community energy groups across the country. And I think this idea of engaging with membership, what does membership mean, and looking at broadening the scope of what membership or involvement with the community energy project is something that's at the forefront of most community energy groups, certainly the majority of the groups that I've spoken to. And I think this idea of broadening the reach of community energy to become slightly more inclusive and attract people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, I think is crucial. I think the more people that are involved with it, the more likely it is to be successful in subsidy-free worlds, because you're going to be relying on different financing models, you're looking for different potential sites, different potential spaces that you can put these projects if they're generation, or engaging with communities to look at retrofitting energy efficiency projects, those sort of things. You need that community buy-in from a wider range of members than perhaps there are at the moment, and I think most groups are that's at the forefront of their mind. I missed the opportunity, Emma, to plug something earlier, which is not like me at all, and it sort of links into this. Is we are looking at how local supply tariffs or how engagement with energy supply or engagement with membership could work for different groups in different parts of the country, and we're sort of opening up conversations with a few different groups on that. And I'd like to invite anyone that has ideas around that sort of area in particular to please get in touch, and it's something we'd love to discuss with you. There are some really interesting ideas coming from how the membership of of a cooperative society or a community energy group could be broadened other than just an investment or just that initial putting your money in and seeing the returns over 20 years, what else that could look like. So it's something I'd be really keen to speak with groups about if they have some ideas or something that they'd like to run by us.
Great, thanks, Tom. And I think that was discussed at one of the events that I dialed into over the past couple of weeks during the fortnight. So I'll dig that out and see who else is looking into that and let you know.
Great, thank you.
Okay, one final question before we go to tea break, and I think this might be slightly leading question from Tim, but from Tim Chris, given their knowledge of local networks, should DNOs, so distribution network operators or DSOs, be proactive and take the initiative to identify community energy generation projects that could assist with local supply and local balancing? Helen, do you want to pick that up first?
I've looked at this because my initial round of stakeholder consultation, people very much felt that there was a role for community and local energy in supporting us to deal with network issues, and how the industry thinking has developed over the last couple of years in terms of a DNL's role in looking for solutions to help deal with network issues, in that and this is how I think the thinking is going to develop for how we need to operate as a DSO, is we need to be very much a neutral market facilitator. So if we identify a network need for something, we can go out to the market and ask for a response or a commercial solution to that need, but we need to be neutral in that. So how we've dealt with that to date is through our flexible services tendering. We've made sure that that's as an inclusive procurement process as possible. So I've been involved with our approach to flexible services from the start in making sure that our tender documents were written in plain English. Basically, I thought if I could understand them, then a community energy group could understand them. I promoted that opportunity through channels where community energy groups would have picked up on that information, and we held webinars and provided support for anybody who wanted to respond to those tender opportunities. And I think that's how we will need to proceed in the future. I don't think we can be proactive in going to any particular customer group and asking them for a specific solution, but where we are looking for network solutions, we can make sure that we are procuring from everybody and all of our customer groups, and making sure our procurement is open access to all.
Great, thank you. Onda, did you want to come in on that too?
I generally agree with Helen. There's one more thing that I want to add, and I think we have a role in equipping all of the customers to have the tools to assess the feasibility of their projects. And in Northern Powergrid, we have done that by taking an open data approach wherever we possibly can. So we published our distribution, our future energy scenarios, and the data and visualization tools going with it, with Open Data Institute in Leeds. We also have heat maps for generation demand availability. So if you're a group or an individual looking at putting the project together, you can have a look at our network online and at the data behind it, which will allow you to have that initial feasibility assessment. And then if you're looking for more detailed conversation, you can approach us or Helen if you're in their area, or any other DNO in which area you might be, and have that more detailed conversation about your project. So I think we have an important role in facilitating that people are able to, as Helen said, understand, but they also have the tools and they have the access to us to make sure they can carry out the projects they want to.
Brilliant, thank you. John, did you, before we wrap up the session, did you want us to be doing another poll?
Coming up.
Thank you. Okay, great. So this is just to ask if the Cooperators Arms this afternoon is something that you would like to get involved in, or actually it was a nice idea maybe, but maybe not for today. And that'll just help us schedule and arrange the rest of the afternoon. Most people are voting on that. I'd just like to thank very much our first three speakers. for speaking, their interesting insights, their sponsorship, and also being principal supporters of Community Energy England as well. So thank you very much. I do appreciate it. Okay, so it looks like maybe and no, so might be kind of the Monday feeling. So maybe we pause it this time, but we look at doing something more interactive in the future. So if you would like us to arrange something that is just more of an informal webinar, so we can get together and have kind of a bit of a coffee and a chat about what different projects and groups are doing, then please do let us know either at the chat or do email us. Okay, so we now have a very short tea break, so please do stretch your legs, get a coffee, and then we'll be coming back here at 3 o'clock for session 2, which will be chaired by Duncan. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you have managed to do what you needed to do in the 5 week. I'm here to convene a discussion, or 4 excellent speakers around the subject of advancing an inclusive energy transition for climate justice. And it should have been Afshin talking to you, who would be much better qualified, because I'm a white, middle-class, older, male, privileged, but I do live in Brixton, so I have a little bit of skin in the game. Emma wrote an excellent blog for Praseg recently, in which she basically said environmental justice is entwined with social justice, and that we don't have climate justice without racial justice. And I think that is very true. In our AGM, which completed before lunch, the attenders voted overwhelmingly that our highest priority activity should be increasing diversity in the sector. And as you probably remember from the 2009 State of the Sector report, we could do better. 4% Black, minority, ethnic, 2% LGBTQ+, 3% neurodiverse, 2% disabled, 6% under 25 years old, and we mustn't focus exclusively on racial issues, and only 34% women. So there's things to do, but lots to be gained from doing it. And we have ongoing relationships and partnerships within the sector and with funders to do that. So without taking up any more time, I would like to hand over, I'm just trying to get to the agenda, to Lee Towers from the University of Brighton, who is also working with Community Energy England as an intern, and we've had great conversations with him. I know he's passionate about this issue, to talk about some common historical roots of racism, patriarchy, and the climate crisis, and how these are shaping the present. So, Lee, if you're ready, over to you.
Thank you. I'll also confess to being a white male, privileged, so I'll do my best. Just give me a minute while I share my screen. So I've tried to condense 600 years into 10 minutes, so we'll see how we go. There's going to be gaps in my presentation and my knowledge, but happy to answer questions at the end. So if this works, okay. So starting another pandemic, another time. The 14th century saw the Black Death. 30 to 40% of the European population died. This created the conditions for a transition, the collapse of the feudal political order. And there's this idea that disease combined with climate and population and power and economy causes a great transition. The Black Death stretched the system already at breaking point, and the short-termism of the 14th century elites is matched worryingly by today's elites. In the aftermath of the Black Death, the scarcity of labour power moved the power dynamic. Peasant wages went up 100%, prices dropped 33%. So you had a lot of peasants across Europe refusing to pay rents, to do services, because they had land that they could become self-sufficient on. This obviously didn't make the elites happy, so they responded. Firstly, they tried to reinstitute serfdom. This didn't work. Then there was kind of a lot of wars in Europe. It was a very disruptive time. And finally, they settled on a colonial expansion, and which resulted in the emergence of Europe, which again is highly contingent, I would add, and I can talk about this at the end. The transition to capitalism is often seen as like progress, but I would question this idea because it involved the subjugation and the creation of a certain kind of woman, working classes, and colonial other, which I will expand upon in the next slide. So within Europe, you get a number of things in this response. There's the land privatization and enclosure of commons. This had a devastating effect on peasants who relied on this. So you got mass impoverishment across the European continent. You can see this in the way diets changed, but more generally, unrest in the 14th and 15th century was usually about liberty. In the 16th and 17th, it was food riots, attacks on bakeries, attacks on grain houses that were exporting local food. So added to this, you start seeing in the 16th century widespread attacks on women and disciplining of women. And you see this in laws across Europe that start outlawing contraception, abortion, and infanticide, and with severe penalties. So in France, for example, in 1556, all women had to report pregnancies with the penalty of death if an unreported child died before being baptized. Similar laws were passed in England. Also, midwives at this time were women, but these were cast as evildoers and removed and replaced by male doctors. Federici, I've got references at the end, argues that the cumulative effects of these changes resulted in women losing control over their procreation. And this effectively became under control of men and eventually the state. This was followed by a witch pandemic, and Federici argues this is a deliberate attack on outspoken independent women. So in the Middle Ages, rituals and magic were widespread and commonplace. Every village had a wise woman, a folk healer. These would be the women who were eventually attacked and tortured and killed as witches. And two factors point to the lie and convenience of this label. Firstly, at this time, many nobles and kings had wizards, male wizards, who were not subject to the same treatment, were not tortured, were not burned at the stake. This was purely women. Added to this, when the witch craze became out of control and they started targeting elite people, the elite across Europe withdrew their support, and the witch craze died down quite quickly. Okay, moving on to the colonies. Madeira was where modern slavery was arguably invented and rationalized. The slavers who owned the sugar plantations there brought indigenous Canary Island people. They worked them to death. These were replaced by a mix of North African slaves and European peasants who'd been kicked off the land by the enclosures. This, again, is a contingent history. There was rebellions, but you can see the way the slavers changed the rules, split the slaves up, that they were perfecting their systems. And by the end of by the time Madeira was denuded and no more use because the soil was exhausted, these techniques were then exported to the New World. In the 16th century, around 1 million African slaves and indigenous people had been put to work in Spain's America. And the accumulation rate here was so high on South American plantations, they doubled capacity every 2 years. Also, the gold that flooded back to Europe, 17,000 tons of it, kickstarted the European economy and propped up the elites with the ability to buy land, workers, and commodities. This is what the modern world was built on, the material plunder of the global south, but also a more subtle discursive division of nature and society is conceived. And thinkers like Thomas Hobbes and René Descartes are crucial to this reformulation. You get a division of society and nature, man versus woman, black versus white, logical versus emotional, mind, body, savage, civilized. And this justifies both the subjugation of the colonial other, and it justifies the oppression of women so that they become passive, homebound, there for children and sex. So this division of society and nature has another effect. It's extended to nature itself. You can treat anything in nature as either an input or an obstruction to what you want to do. And there's a final thing of knowledge enclosure. So all knowledge that is worthwhile is produced by a European male. All the rest is witchcraft or savagery to be ignored or suppressed. And this may seem like history now, but the debate is raging today in UK universities about decolonising the curriculum. So how is this relevant today? So this image shows a European imagination of the witch's Sabbath and the Caribbean natives and you can see the similarity between the pictures. Okay, so the relevance today. The US, UK, we can see institutional racism and sexism in the UK. We see it in education, we see it in prison, in the courts and in prison, and we've seen it recently in the health impacts of COVID-19. The climate crisis is fundamentally a racist effect of the development of the modern world. So the developed world caused it. The developing world is more affected now and in the future. We can see this graphic here of historical cumulative emissions. America is responsible for 25% of all cumulative emissions. The whole of Africa, 0.01%. And we've got a cultural imperialism in the world system, a kind of a core of Europe and the European derived countries, and then the periphery and the economic effects of this, which means imbalanced economics where there's only one winner with all kind of trade arrangements. Finally, the relevance to the low carbon transition and community energy is extractivism, and whether we end this or continue it. So I'm going to focus on mining, but there is also a problem with waste thing that I can talk about in questions. So mining, rare minerals are spread around the world, and the demand for them are going to soar because we need them for EVs, for solar panels, etc. And they're often in places of poor environmental governance. All of these places have problems. I'm going to focus on cobalt in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Democratic Republic of Congo has a troubled history. So it was a colonial country under Belgium, which used it for cheap labor, land, and food. Uranium was mined there, used in the Manhattan Project, and it nationalized after independence. There was a series of wars broke out in the 1990s. Control of mining was a key source of funding for this war. In the 2000s, the concessions were privatized. So you can't deny that there are some benefits from the two types of minings you get there, large-scale mining and artisanal mining, but the environmental impacts really outweigh these. So if you look here, this is an example of artisanal mining and the dangers involved in this kind of mining. There's a lot of collapsing of mines that you can see you've got no protective equipment on.
Just to say, 1 minute left.
Yeah, I'm nearly finished. And this is a graphic of the externalities of both large-scale mining and artisanal mining. It poisons the soil, it poisons, there's kind of pollution in the air, and there's pollution in the local rivers, so it gets into the food. And there's higher rates of cancer and lead in blood, etc. So the policy recommendations to mining include this list, and a lot of it is high-level stuff. So it's kind of focusing on, for example, including the rare minerals in the NDCs. Give credit to places like the Democratic Republic of Congo. Diversifying mining enterprises, but specifically for community energy, is we need to be aware that the low carbon inputs have both problems with where they come from and where they end up. And we need to be aware of this. We need to lobby government to take notice of this, and we need to think about the whole life cycle of things, and also demand reduction, really. We can't keep a similar lifestyle of high energy usage because there's not enough of it for everyone in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Absolutely fascinating. Without further ado, I would like to move us on to our next speaker, who is Harfiyah Haleem from ifees, EcoIslam, who is going to talk to us about green mosques. Harfiyah, are you ready?
Yes, I think so. I've been working with green mosques projects since 2005, starting off with ifees and continuing with the London Sustainability Exchange. As this is a program about inclusion, I have been, I've put on the screen, if you hang on a second, it's on the desktop. That's not good. That was on. Here we are, never mind. In the corner of one of these slides at the bottom is a picture of a very large lady standing outside a village mosque in Baumerte, which is a small village near Marrakesh, which they had, where they had one of the last COP meetings in 2017, I think it was. The Germans have helped them to build a village mosque out of cob, mud and stuff. And this is my green mosque project for the last 20 years nearly. Where is that picture?
Harfiyah, do you want to try and share a screen, or?
I am trying to find a screen to share, yes. It's not doing the right thing. Never mind. Where are we?
It's the green button at the bottom of your screen.
That's the one. This lady here, I had it on a PDF which I sent to John, which he said he will distribute after the meeting. This lady here, I think she gave her land for this mosque to be built on with its solar panels and all the cobalt involved in that. In Islam, we have managed to inspire various countries to start greening up their mosques, which are the most numerous community buildings in Muslim societies and usually form the centerpiece of Muslim cities. So this is an example of a village project where they use the solar panels to produce energy, not just for the mosque, but for schools and for the street lamps in the village, which helps make the village safer at night. So this is the lady who gave her land, I think, to build the mosque on. We have projects all over the world, starting in Tanzania. There's an eco-mosque village, an eco-village with an eco-mosque. We have projects in Indonesia. They're hoping to green up 1,000 mosques and make them into eco-mosques by 2020. I don't know how far they've got with that yet. There are some eco-mosques in the United States. There are 1 or 2 in England that I know about. And there is another national project, 2 projects in Morocco and Jordan. So this is not just inclusion, but it's international reach and is from the ground. The grassroots in those countries are being helped to green up their mosques in various ways and produce solar energy. It's one of them. Water harvesting is another thing that they do. We have also in Birmingham, in this country, we have, there was one in Levenshulme in Manchester, which had solar panels. I think it still does. And there's one in Cambridge, which is the first slide in this slide set. Go back to that. That's East London Mosque, where we did our first project in 2005. This is the new Cambridge Eco Mosque, which is built with natural wood and water harvesting and solar panels. There's another plan for an eco mosque in Salford in Manchester, and the university there. And in our one of our projects in 2014-15, we helped the Palmer's Green Mosque in London to have solar panels on its roof too. And then I discovered that there already were solar panels on the Finsbury Park Muslim Welfare House, and they've been there since 2011. So mosques are not as backward as one might assume, and they are very suitable buildings. As I say, there are central buildings in the community, quite large communities with huge congregations. Before COVID-19, we used to have thousands of people going to mosques every Friday, and schools running, and so the big communities. Palmer's Green is the one I know about best. They had good income from their community donations, and they were able to pay for their own solar panels straight off from their funding, and then they retroactively asked for funding for them as sold off solar panels one at a time to some members of the congregation who wanted to help. So they also, quite a lot of them are on modern buildings now, especially built to house the large crowds of people who go there. Palmer's Green is one of those. It was built in an ecological fashion with good insulation. There's another one I went to a mosque expo. I was invited to talk about green mosques, and the faith associates who ran the expo invited also some people from Bristol who spoke on the same platform with me, who had renovated an old building in Bristol, which had been very badly damaged by rot. And they had to rebuild all the walls and reinforce the insulation and have a different heating system. I don't know what else they did, but I can't remember. But they had renovated their mosque to be more ecological. I don't think they put solar panels on that one though. But there are lots of mosques looking to do that. When we did our Green Mosque project 2017, 18, we looked at a lot of mosques in London. We contacted them and found out which ones were interested in generating energy. And there were about 10 or 12 of them that wanted to. We also found that that there was a group of central London mosques, but we never got any further than that in getting them together to talk about solar power. Some of them have
1 minute left, Harfiyah, thanks.
1 minute left, okay, right. So this is why we have the 22 mosques in Birmingham from the Sultan Bahu Foundation, which have become eco-mosques, thanks to the efforts of Kamran Fazl, who is our most recent addition to ifees. And he goes around giving talks, and there are some slides at the end of this set which are about that. So the projects are still going on. There they are, that's one of them. And these are some of the workshops they do in Birmingham about green mosques and plastic-free iftars. And there was a visit my mosque every year, which used to happen before COVID. So they invite the public in to share iftar. So this is what is going on, but it's not doing what normal community energy enterprises do. It's just a mosque here and a mosque there, and not much coordination going on. And that's why I've been a bit quiet lately. We had funding via London Sustainability Exchange, but that's all petered out now. And nothing has come to replace it. So, and in the last few years with them, all we were doing was energy saving projects. So that was interesting, but time consuming. And it's not working now because of the COVID restrictions, and most of the mosques are closed most of the time now. But it is another purpose for a mosque that has got solar panels, that they can still create and sell energy to the grid, or if there's a local DNO, they can sell it to a local DNO. There was a project of Celsius in southeast London to sell energy produced from the roof of a block of flats to some of the people who are living in them. And
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up finally. Thank you so much. That was very inspiring, and it feels like there's a huge opportunity there for collaboration between mosques and community energies and stuff for both to teach each other. I like the Palmer's Green example. That sounds really inspiring.
Get it going.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now, again, I would like to pass on to the next speaker, Carlton Smith from Bradford Community Energy, speaking about ensuring communities are represented and included in the energy transition. Absolutely key. Carlton, over to you.
Good afternoon. Just try and share my screen. Super. Hello, so my name's Carlton Smith from Bradford Community Energy. We're a new kid on the block. We only registered as a community benefit society last month, and we've presently got a community share offer that we've opened up to part of Bradford district generally, and the whole country. So I'd like to say thank you to our sponsors, Power to Change, Co-ops UK, and the Community Share Unit have been tremendous help for us, and especially getting the standard mark. So, I can't move my screen. So Bradford, they're up in the north of England, where we've been working with a local community anchor called Bradford Trident, who we've been working with them and their buildings to develop some renewable schemes, both for photovoltaic and ground source heat pump. So Trident have been going since 2000. They're very well established in their bit of Little Horton in South Bradford, and they've got connections to faith forums, business forums, neighbourhood forums, all sections of their community. So they're a really good local partner to work with. And working with them, we're looking to raise £22,000, primarily for the ground source heat pump, but also the solar panels, as I say. So the context we're doing our share offer in is not ideal. So we've got COVID-19, increasing inequalities in wealth, people's health and opportunities, all restricted as COVID affects BME groups far worse. The recession that results from the lockdown is going to hit our communities quite heavily, and with schools shutting down, educational opportunities for people greatly reduced, and a real worry across Bradford. We've also got the Black Lives Matter global conversation going on about systemic racism in our societies, and very important that is, and a good opportunity for us to reach out to more folk. So Little Horton, where our scheme is based, has population 23,000, with the third most deprived ward in Bradford. Bradford has 30 wards, so we're right down there at the bottom, really deprived ward. And Bradford itself is the fifth most deprived local authority in England. So we're at the bottom of the bottom run. So a lot of high density housing, old Victorian terrace houses, very prevalent. High occupancy houses, low aspiration for people, low household incomes, high fuel poverty. As a result, Bradford district is 15%, within Little Horton, that's much higher again. It's also an area, very young area, a lot of young children, so a third of the population is under 16 years old, and we have a very diverse population. So 58% of our population are Muslim, And as you can see from this graph, quite a diverse section of society represented, quite a large Afro-Caribbean section as well, mainly Catholic, a lot of North Africans, a lot of South Asians, mostly Muslim. So when we were thinking about how we would pitch our community share offer, we really wanted to try and make it as inclusive to the local population as possible. So we've been working with the Community Shares Unit to try and demonstrate that community shares are compliant, or can be compliant, with Islamic finance principles. So this basically means carrying out a full audit of our community benefit society, how we're operated, what we do, our banking operations, and try and demonstrate that all those fit in with Sharia law. And then working with the Community Shares Unit using Bradford Community Energy as a case study to try and establish the ground rules that need to be demonstrated so other share offers can also get Sharia law endorsement and appeal to a wider section of society beyond our classic white, male, middle class, privileged group that generally apply for community share offers. We're looking to reach out to Islamic brothers and sisters, especially in Bradford, but across Yorkshire and the rest of the country. So we're trying to use Bradford Community Energy as a case study to show the case and to get worked into the charter mark that community share offers in some areas of work comply with Sharia law and so Islamic finance principles. Obviously, this doesn't work for all community benefit societies, so the pubs and shops would have difficulty because their operations aren't as ethically obvious. So if a shop's selling tobacco or alcohol, that wouldn't work, and obviously a pub selling alcohol also wouldn't work. But energy co-ops certainly should do that.
I have a minute and a half left, Colin, please.
So we're looking to show that social investment, and we think it's compliant with Islamic finance because there's shared risk. They're not transferable shares, so you invest, you can't sell on your share, you can only recoup capital. It's an ethical trading, so you're productive with your capital investment. It's invested into assets, and it's in an ethical business because it's into carbon reduction and tackling climate change. We're also looking to increase our financial inclusion by offering a really low minimum share offer, £100. We would like to get it a bit lower, but it's just not practical through the administration of the offer to do it any lower than that. So we are offering stage payments within BD5, Little Horton, bit of Bradford, so people can pay over a year to get on side. And we're also addressing digital exclusion, offering paper and online applications, and we can do the paper in multiple languages. So we're doing all the usual engagement stuff, flyers, online, press releases, but really working with all the groups across Bradford we can reach out with, including the Council for Mosques, Born in Bradford, the statutory sector, all our local VCS groups, community anchors in other areas, and we're looking to replicate the community building model that we're using in Little Horton across other areas of Bradford district in future share offers, which is why getting the Sharia compliance is really important to us. So that's what we're about. We hope we're successful in getting that Sharia endorsement and more importantly, getting it part of the charter mark going forward, working with Community Shares Unit and our other supporters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlton. Fascinating. It's such an important and interesting project. And without further ado, I would like to remind everybody, please, to put your questions in the chat, and I will try and juggle them at the end. We should have about 10 minutes. And hand over to Rachel Mountain from Ethex and Energise Africa, who will be speaking about delivering clean and affordable energy for all across sub-Saharan Africa. Rachel, if you're ready, over to you.
Thanks, Duncan. I'll just share my screen. Okay. Yes. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see that. Energise Africa was set up about 3 years ago to look at inclusive energy access across sub-Saharan Africa that particularly had issues around investment and being able to access affordable clean energy. So if we look at kind of what's happened over the last few years, in 2010, 1.2 billion people globally didn't have access to electricity. And now, according to the World Bank stats from last year, it's 840 million people. But unfortunately, 570 million people are living in sub-Saharan Africa, many of which, sort of 87%, are living in rural areas, which makes it, quite difficult to get the same kind of energy investment and grid investment that you've seen in kind of Europe and other areas. So the main issue was how can you get finance to flow to solar companies that are operating in Africa so that you can extend pay-as-you-go solar and make it more affordable for business and small communities. And in terms of energy access, clean energy access, it's not just access to electricity, it also underpins a considerable number of the other SDGs, so 10 in total. So things like obviously poverty alleviation, hunger, education, gender equality are all linked. So energy access plays a vital kind of nexus role in terms of helping sort of bridge and achieve the SDG gap by 2030. And as I said, unfortunately, Africa is not getting the investment that's needed into that sort of clean energy transition. And the Global Off-Grid Lighting Association sort of estimates that over the next 5 years, 12.5 billion of investment would be needed to achieve SDG 7 by 2030. The problem with the finance at the moment for solar energy companies is it's difficult to access, it's expensive, and it's not necessarily suited to their needs. So traditional banks and financial institutions weren't willing to lend to the solar businesses that were operating there, or if they were willing to lend, they would do it on the basis of wanting to collateralize the loans by 125%, which just didn't make sense for companies needing access to low-cost, flexible working capital, and that's the only way that you could bridge that gap to then be able to provide pay-as-you-go solar for families and businesses. And without access to monthly payment plans, there was an inability to kind of hit any of those SDG targets. So if you sort of contrast that problem and those challenges in getting access to clean energy in Africa, you've also got, on the flip side, in Europe, you've got a burgeoning impact investing market. Currently it's £10 billion and expected to rise to around £40 billion by 2025. And then you've got this issue of a lack of sort of accessible products. So last year, the UK government produced a survey called Investing for a Better World, which basically highlighted there was huge, demand for kind of impactful products that were accessible, available, that were transparent, and that were clear and straightforward. So they were the challenges that kind of existed, and Energise Africa was set up 3 years ago with support from UK Aid, Virgin Unite, Good Energies Foundation, and Partnerships for Green Growth to try and kind of bridge that gap. So essentially what we do through Energise Africa is provide an impact investing platform where individuals who want to invest in £50 can invest in pioneering sustainable energy companies, solar companies operating in, we've got 3 here, UPOA, establishing kind of solar home systems in Cameroon. You've got Azuri Technologies that are kind of building out their business in Kenya, and you've got Ulu that are working in Burkina Faso. Now, these are investment opportunities where, you know, your capital is at risk and returns aren't guaranteed, but they're designed to be accessible in a way that individuals in the UK can look at creating a social environmental impact on the ground and potential financial return. And they also provide the finance that wasn't available, the working capital finance that was urgently needed by UPOA, Azuri, Ulu, to be able to provide them these solar home systems on a pay-as-you-go basis, and just make them and put them in the financial reach of families and small business owners that just wouldn't otherwise be able to afford to do that. So where Energise Africa is slightly different is we are trying to enable people to have more control of their money, where it goes, what's the impact on the ground. And we do it in a way where we blend catalytic capital from other sources. So partner institutions, so we have match funding from UK Aid, we have guarantees from UK Aid, we have other kind of funding from Good Energies Foundation and Virgin Unite, and we blend that alongside individual investments to try and de-risk the opportunities for investing in Africa. So over the course of the 2.5 years, we have put £16 million through the platform from roughly around 3,000 active investors. That's enabled 450,000 people across 13 African countries to access solar systems that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to afford. And it's helped to mitigate 100,000 tonnes of CO2 per year. And in addition, the investments that are made by individuals, the intention is that they're repaid on a 6-monthly basis, part interest, part capital, and we've repaid £5 million to investors so far. So the impact is sort of, you know, formalised here, as I've just sort of mentioned. In addition to, you know, people being able to, 450,000 people being able to access affordable energy, we've also helped to create 5,000 jobs from productive use solar. So productive use solar is also available on pay-as-you-go payment plans, and that would include things like, you know, salon, barbershop, business in a box, solar irrigation, water pumps, and again helps to kind of fuel that economic development. And without the pay-as-you-go plans, people just wouldn't be able to afford to purchase these products that can then generate an income for, you know, for themselves and their families. To kind of just give you an overview of what we've achieved to date. So this year we're a finalist for the 2020 Ashton Awards. We've got a Trustpilot rating of 9.4 out of 10. We've had funding from Partnership for Green Growth, startup funding, and also in 2020 we've got Scale Up funding. We've had Energise Africa showcased at the World Economic Forum about empowering people to, you know, tackle climate change and the SDGs with their money. And we were recognised by Mission Innovation as one of the, you know, 100 clean energy solutions that could be capable of delivering 3 gigatons of emission reductions by 2025.
Last minute.
So we're about trying to use technology to disrupt and transform the systemic issues that are occurring in terms of Africa not being able to access energy and not having the investment, but also trying to give people access to products that they need and would like to invest in from a European perspective. Energise Africa is kind of a partnership between two of Europe's leading impact investing platforms, Ethex, that supports UK community benefit societies and social enterprises, and Lenderhand, a Dutch-based platform. And so we've combined to raise 150 million from 20,000 investors to help 100 plus organisations in 23 countries. And what I would say is, you know, we've mentioned sort of COVID. I think the situation, you know, COVID has had a, you know, impact. There are moves that are happening to shore up the resilience of the sector. There's still some challenging times, and although there's been progress, there's still, you know, much more needs to be done. And obviously COVID is adding an additional dimension to provide challenges for, you know, some of those organisations that are already operating in Africa. You know, and it's great to see that, you know, there's governments mobilising money. There's a $100 million relief fund, hopefully going to be launched soon to shore up the sector, because I think it's vital in terms of you know, trying to make sure it comes through this and weathers the storm, you know, in order to kind of progress then to achieve the SDGs.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you.
That was very inspiring. Amazing to see what returns on investment can be in Africa, and how much money is wanting to go to impact investing. We've now got just under 10 minutes for question and answer, so I'm going to do my best to negotiate our way through. And I'd like to start with a question that affects all of us who are involved in renewable energy. To Lee, can you suggest a way that people can weigh up the costs and benefits of climate actions? For example, how can we find solar panels that don't add to the problems with mining in developing countries?
Okay, so this, yeah, at the moment it's quite a difficult thing to do, but there is a scheme. There's a thing called extended producer responsibility, and there's a scheme in Europe. I'll find the details and share them, that have recycled 30,000 tons of solar panels, and we need, and this kind of scheme not only will lead to more responsible post-production, it could also push more responsible design in the first place, which will lower kind of impacts. You've got thin film solar panels is one example of this. So there are kind of I mean, the problem is, in a country like the UK, which has stopped producing things, you're always importing. You put yourself at a disadvantage. I think if we'd have kept making things, we could be more. We would have a lot more control. But failing that, really thinking about, as we're arguing that governments should take notice of our, or the community energy sector's social value, along with just the costs, the sector needs to think about the social value of the things they're buying as well. I hope that answers the question.
And yes or no, do you think the sector should develop a guide to sourcing ethical materials?
Yeah, and I would happily help on this.
You're on, that's a deal. Thank you. Moving on to more local concerns, Giovanna from Chelsea said to Harfiyah, I know that you've been busy pushing really hard to get solar panels on the roofs of mosques in London. I was wondering what the barriers have been, and how could a local group like Chelsea help? And that I'd also like to get input from Carlton on how it's been going in Bradford as well.
The barriers of the right sort of funding to do this sort of work. All the funding so far has been on sustainability issues and energy saving, and a few have been on campaigns to make sustainability an important thing in mosques. There haven't been any funding that we've been able to get hold of. There was something called the Urban Community Energy Fund, which never, we did apply for at one point, but that didn't happen because that was something to do with our application not having enough mosque members on it. But then it was a complicated story anyway. They did have some to start with, but they got dropped off.
And how could a local group help?
To get the mosque management engaged in doing anything apart from running the mosque, which is really a big job, and they're all volunteers, and they're all getting, some of them are getting quite old. When there's some younger ones coming through, like there were at the Mosque Expo, I said something about, there were some younger people coming through, younger imams and younger mosque managers and even female mosque managers. There might be more stuff going through, but at the moment it's just sort of fizzled out basically. And I haven't had the energy to pursue it since then.
Carlton, what's been the story in Bradford?
I think it's down to that leadership again. Third, fourth generation people seem to really buy in with the whole green agenda. It aligns with Islamic teachings very much. So if you can get your leadership team brought into the project, that's a tremendous help. And then there's a wealth of technical expertise and experience out there within CEE and Community Shares Unit and Locality and Power Exchange. All these groups have connections to wonderful, generous, talented people that can assist in the technical and financial aspects and governance of accessing finance and testing the viability of your schemes. So there is a huge pool of talent and helpful people out there, and small groups should make best use of it.
And on the issue of investors from a Muslim background, do you think interest should be minimal or zero? And what is the actual model that would work?
We've gone for just over 3% because that's all our financial model can cope with. It's a trade-off between how much financial community benefit fund gains from it to how much the capital investors gain from it.
And is that acceptable to your Muslim cohort, to potentially?
Yeah, absolutely. They're putting their capital at risk. There's no guarantee they get it back. So it's only reasonable it should at least keep track with inflation, if nothing else, and a small, 3%'s a great deal these days, is it? But especially, but yeah, I think a small return protects the value of their investment, if nothing else, and certainly increases the attractiveness of it.
Brilliant. And just a quick question about doing more faith buildings, a lot of which are listed. Do either of you have any guidance for groups that want to deal with faith communities? Other than deal with the management?
The one in Bristol that I was talking about is an old church, I think, and they put their energies into heat pumps as well as insulation. So I think that's what they did. They didn't generate energy as such, but yes, if you've got problems with listed buildings, you can't use their roofs for solar panels unless they're very subtle ones that fit in with the ethos of the building. And there are getting to be more interesting solar panels around, but they're probably more expensive. There were some that you could bendy solar panels if you could fit on a dome, probably. I never went into that. But as I said, they're probably more expensive than the other sort. And right. I have now got the helicopter type of solar panel construction, which rotates and follows the sun, so it picks up the sun whatever angle it's at. I don't know how far that's going to develop.
It sounds like it could be a beautification of a religious building.
Yeah, you never know.
Lovely. There's a last question for Rachel. I'm sorry I didn't bring in more of a discussion about investing in Africa, but any information or links you want to send us, we will put into the follow-up. The Ethex, can one both open a new ISA and a new IFISA in the same tax year? John wants to know.
No, you can only open one new ISA in the tax year.
Right.
Unfortunately.
I'm sorry we didn't open up Africa. That would be a problem to solve, wouldn't it? I think now everybody deserves a 5-minute break before we crack off into the amazing frenzy of the next session, a 1-hour summary of Community Energy Fortnight. So please take your break and come back at 4 o'clock, and we will get into the frenzy fast. Thank you, everybody.
Another tea break, 5 minutes.
Hello, everybody. We now have the 5-minute fortnight frenzy, and I attended quite a few of the events during Community Energy Fortnight, and each one of them was pretty frenzied, a 50-minute frenzy, and could have gone on longer. So each speaker has 5 minutes. We won't have time for a question and answer, so I'm sure it'll raise more questions than it answers. But much of the material from Community Energy Fortnight is or will be available in video and note form. So if something piques your interest, then please follow it back to the original event. And I won't say any more than that, other than to thank all the speakers for their contribution to Community Energy Fortnight and for being prepared to dive into 5 minutes of summing it up, and I shall be ruthless. I shall try and make my phone go beep, beep, beep at 4 minutes, 30 seconds, which means please start wrapping up, because I will guillotine you at 5. Thank you so much, everybody. And we're going to start with Matthew Clayton from Thrive Renewables, talking about funding community energy. Over to you, Matthew.
Matthew doesn't actually appear to be here at this moment, so we maybe need to just skip Matthew for now and go to Kai.
In which case, Kai, if you're ready, please.
Yeah, thanks, Duncan. I'll just share the screen. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, great. Thanks, Duncan. Hi, everyone. My name's Kai Hoare. I'm the local energy coordinator at Regen. We are a mission-led centre of renewable energy expertise working to decarbonise, decentralise and democratise our energy system. And I just wanted to speak about what we've been doing recently, especially around the fortnight, and how that shows how community energy can make use of collaboration with other organisations. So the main activity that we've done during the fortnight has been our Net Zero Community Energy webinar that we hosted with Northern Powergrid. And obviously we heard from Ente earlier on about some of the work that they're doing on community to help community energy in their region. And during this webinar, we sort of spoke about how the benefits of community energy has been shown throughout the sort of COVID-19 pandemic. And that's something that's, fairly clear to everyone on this call, I'm sure, but something that was also appreciated by DNOs and by local authorities and others. But we also asked some questions about why there are less community energy projects in some regions than others. So particularly, as we can see in the sort of state of the sector report in the north and east of England, that appears to be the case, and there's lots of organisations that want to help address that. Spoke about how that can be addressed and how there is support available from organisations such as local authorities, such as Northern Powergrid and such as LEPS. We had Josh from the Rural Community Energy Fund speaking about that. And I think one thing that we wanted to pick up on was a question that we often get asked, and we've been doing this sort of work for a number of years, working with DNOs to engage community energy groups. And it's what's the motivation for them engaging with us, and why do we help facilitate those conversations? And really for us, it's a sort of mutually beneficial relationship that community energy can help DNOs and network operators and local authorities ensure that our energy transition is just and socially equitable. And they can help ensure that, as we look at the scale of change that's needed in our energy system, we really need to make sure that no one's left behind. And then DNOs are large organisations that can help equip communities with the skills and support they need to make a meaningful contribution to net zero. And I think that's something we've tried to pick up on in 2 recent strategies that we've written for Western Power Distribution and Northern Powergrid, where we're really keen that these DNOs prioritise community energy and look at actions that can really help communities, because if they write it down in their business plan, that means they'll dedicate time and resources to it. And one of the examples of this is something we wrote in the WPD community strategy. And now that there's specialist appointments available for community energy organisations to sit down with their network planners and engineers and talk about some issues or projects that they're doing. So how does that fit into the wider work that we're doing at Regen? Well, just one example, where we're based in Exeter, and we've been working for a number of years with the Devon Community Energy Network, and all the different groups in Devon who've now formed Devon Energy, which is a sort of collective of community energy groups looking to scale up and looking to develop a pipeline of 100 megawatts of solar in partnership with Devon County Council, which will be backed through a power purchase agreement. So that's a really good example, we feel, of how a local authority can help community energy in its region. And that sort of the model for that has been developed by Communities for Renewables. And that's sort of coming off the back of 8 years of collaborative work that's been done with ourselves, the community energy organisations here, and Devon County Council to build that relationship to a level where the sort of meaningful action and scaling up of community energy can occur. We've also been helping to chair some sessions of the Devon Climate Emergency's Net Zero Task Force, and that's looking at how we're bringing together experts from a range of fields, from energy and waste to food, land, sea, and mobility, looking at how over the next 10 years different actions will need to occur in each of these different sectors and how they'll interact to help us reach net zero as quickly as possible. And that's something we've also been exploring in our Decade to Make a Difference papers. And we've got another one coming out next month on cities and regions, and looking at how local authorities can deliver on their energy ambitions. And yeah, just to touch on another one of our publications recently was on Net Zero South Wales, where we worked with the gas and electricity operators in that region to look at decarbonised scenarios for 2050. And that's some of the sort of whole system thinking that we like to champion, looking at how different organisations and different sort of infrastructure providers, I guess, sort of interact. So yeah, thanks for listening. And there's my email address on the slide if anyone wants to get in touch or sign up to our community's newsletter or anything else.
Thanks, Kai, very much. And without any comment, passing on to Anna Gorbatcheva from What's the Deal? The P2P energy trading game, talking about peer-to-peer energy trading and fair low carbon future.
That's right. I'm gonna share my screen. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Great. Okay, well, hi everyone. My name is Anna Gorbatcheva and I am a PhD student at the UCL Energy Institute. And in this 5-minute presentation, I want to talk to you about our most recent event, which we hosted last week as part of this Community Energy Fortnight. So on Tuesday last week, we had a play-in session for our peer-to-peer energy trading board game, and where we introduced the online version of the game. The event was aimed at people from all sorts of background interested in peer-to-peer energy trading and community energy. We had researchers and students joining from universities, but also people working in community energy in the energy industry or in government and policy. In the session, my colleagues and we gave a 30-minute introduction into the game, covering all sorts of aspects, including how you play it and what sort of facilitation materials we have. We then went ahead and assigned all participants into virtual breakout rooms so that everyone interested could try out the game and team up with other participants and test it. So we had over 30 people joining our play-in session, and those who joined expressed interest in the game specifically to use it, for example, for research activities, prompting discussions in community energy projects and teaching, but also for personal interest. And during that event, we also provided live Twitter support on Twitter. Here on the right side, you can see the final boards of the playing sessions with the results and some feedback from our participants. So yeah, through the feedback form we sent out later, we received some valuable insights into where participants would like to play the game, and also with how many people, but also more information on what sort of facilitation material could be useful to have in the future, what other changes they would like to see. And for us, this was a completely new experience as well. We previously haven't hosted virtual playing sessions like this, but I guess it still shows that even during lockdown and quarantine, people are still interested in this topic, and playing these nerdy energy games, I think, at home is still always fun. So some background information on the game, why have we developed it? The game was initially developed in 2018-19 as part of the Petros-funded project Internet of Energy Things, and our main targeted audience were policymakers and participants in peer-to-peer energy trading trials. We have played What's the Deal with a wide range of organizations, including Ofgem, Citizens Advice, and Brixton Community, which is an energy trading pilot in London. And we've recently won some more funding from UCL to develop further facilitation tools for community energy groups, businesses and schools, to use the game, for example, for recruitment, training, and other educational purposes. But then came COVID-19, so we had to restructure our approach, and this is why we developed the online version of the game. So why should you play the game? Here on the right side, you can see a couple of pictures how this actually looks like if it's in real life and in person rather than online. But yeah, we have developed the game to allow you to, for example, and your team to team up and play a household with solar panels and a battery that has decided to take part in a peer-to-peer energy trading scheme. So this means you can buy and sell electricity between you as well as to and from the grid. So this should kind of replicate a real energy trading scheme. And even if you aren't interested in peer-to-peer energy trading specifically, we've seen this game being used in many different cases, also to just prompt discussions about the transition to a more decentralized low-carbon energy future. This game has 3 different versions, with different aims and different setups. And the last version has a stronger community focus on peer-to-peer energy trading, which could be quite interesting to play. So for those of you who don't like to play online, we also have a easy to print DIY version of the game available on our website, and they're all instructions how to download it, so you can get quite creative playing it. And finally, yeah, all the information I just mentioned is also available on our website. Feel free to drop me a message after this conference and I'll be happy to help. For the online game, we also should publish or will publish an online tutorial soon, which will be on the website. So if you've missed the play-in session last week, you can always learn through the video. Thank you very much for Community Energy for making us part of the Energy Fortnight. And yeah, feel free to write me an email and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Anna. And we're ahead of schedule, amazingly. So I'm going to pass on, keep it that way, to Colin Nolden from the Centre for Research into Energy Demand Solutions. And he's going to talk about policy asymmetry between supply and demand. What approach is necessary for a just transition to net zero? Colin.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Apologise my wild hair. This is what lockdown has done to me. So what I want to introduce now to you is in the chat, I have put in a link, which is to a website, which is menti.com and a code. What I will do now is I will share the screen as well of Menti on my computer. So this is a survey that I would like you to fill out if possible. It's about 9 questions and it should take about 10 to 15 minutes to do it in your own time. But I would like to introduce this first. So this is part of research, as Duncan mentioned, at the Centre for Research into Energy Demand Solutions. And I know Anna is also involved in that. It's based at the University of Oxford, and we're looking into well, as it suggests, into encouraging a greater focus on energy demand solutions. This also links back to what Lee mentioned, that in order to properly decolonize our economic systems, we need to think about more significant energy demand reductions. My particular project in all this is a project which focuses on the policies of energy demand. And I specifically look at policy asymmetry, at policy asymmetries. And this policy asymmetry exists between energy supply and energy demand policy. Historically, energy demand reductions have played a much more significant role in reducing carbon emissions, but also in actually leveling up. So in reducing inequality compared to energy supply policies. This is because energy demand policies, for example, they address the energy efficiency of buildings. And they can also help address fuel poverty more. So you can provide a lot more targeted fuel poverty support through energy demand policies than through energy supply policies. And this research on the asymmetry between energy supply and energy demand policies, it includes a look it includes research which focuses onto the greater power of supply side actors. For example, that the way that, the energy market is structured in the UK, that the suppliers have a lot of power, and those organisations that run power stations have a lot of power. It is something to do with the accountancy treatment of energy efficiency assets, that savings are not valued as much as gains as growth in income. It is something to do with the lower visibility of demand-side projects, because they're often at the end-use stage rather than large, flashy power stations or solar panels on roofs, for example. It is something to do with the greater complexity of demand-side evaluation. And ultimately, there's a lot to do with trust and risk perceptions. And this is also linked to the scale of transactions in markets. Now, my slides that that are available through the link that I sent you, they are also tied into this overarching theme of Community Energy England's fortnight now, which is about the just transition. So, for example, my first question is about the key determinants for an individual to benefit from current energy policies. What are the key determinants? And as the determinants I've identified, for example, could be level of education, could be age, could be car ownership, and everybody who is who's attending this video conference has a valid opinion that I would like to know. If any of these questions you find tricky, please feel free to skip them and then just move on to the next one. But this is certainly something that every one of you can answer, and every one of your answers will be valued, because this is not just for experts to answer. This is also something that everybody of us probably has an idea of what or who the beneficiary is of current energy policies. The other questions, they then start dealing more explicitly with policy making attention. So how much policy making attention do different policies receive? So, for example, we know that offshore wind has received a lot of attention, and quite rightly so. The costs have been declining, but some might argue that, for example, certain other approaches, like, for example, changing practices, have received less policy making attention. So I would like to have your opinion on that. And then I'd also like to have your opinion on that moving forward, in terms of how does policy making attention reflect or is reflected in our trajectory to net zero, and especially a just transition to net zero. What should be prioritized? Because part of this research we also hope to publish at some point in relation to the economic recovery package that the government is currently developing. So to give government an insight into how different communities, you are now a more practitioner community, might be considering energy policies in general, and the effects that they might have on a just transition to net zero. I also have questions specifically about what kind of changes they will bring about. I have a question which is kind of more about the long term, to see at what point we might see a particular technology, for example, reaching market maturity, or a particular practice like working from home being more socially accepted. And then I have questions also quite specifically about energy demand policy. And this survey is open all day. And I look forward to any kind of submissions that you're willing to make. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you, Duncan, for putting me on.
Colin, thank you very much. Can I just ask, you say it's open all day today, or can people consult it, do it over the next few days?
I can leave it on for the next few days, yes. I can also give you the link and the code, and then we can...
Could you send that to John? That would be great. Don't do it now. I think that's really fascinating and brings up a lot of energy justice issues, and why it is difficult for us as local, with such a local focus and a community focus, to get heard by the government that is so focused on growth in the old paradigm. Boris is going to be talking about net zero tomorrow, and is going to talk probably exclusively about technology and investment in infrastructure. And we need to jump up and down and say, no, people and communities need to be central to the way we move forward into the energy transition. You won't succeed without us. On that little rant, I shall pass on to our next speaker, who is Steve Shaw, from Power for the People, who has that at heart, and will talk to us about the campaign for the local electricity bill. Steve.
Hello, thank you very much, Duncan. I presume you can hear me fine. Great to be, thank you. Great to be a part of this. Thank you very much for letting me present here. And thank you very much to Community Energy England for, as always, running a great conference. Good to be part of Community Energy Fortnight. We, Power for People, are running a campaign for a bill that is now currently in Parliament called the Local Electricity Bill. We have been running this campaign now for around about 2 years, a bit more, and the campaign is going well. Support for the bill is growing across the country and indeed in Parliament. But first, a little bit of background. The aim of the bill is to help unlock the enormous potential that we have for more community energy infrastructure. You may know of the government report of 2014 that said that by now we should have around 3 gigawatts across Britain, or the UK, I should say. So we're only at about a tenth of that. And indeed, we believe, and there's other evidence that shows it should be even more. So we're trying to unlock, and the bill itself, the local electricity bill, is trying to unlock this enormous potential. The way that it would do that is it would make local supply possible. It would establish a right to local supply, and it would give the duty to Ofgem to create a local supply license and a process whereby selling directly to local customers would mean that the costs and the bureaucracy and so on that you would face, that any local supplier would face, would be proportionate to the scale of that supply. That is really what's stopping it all happening at the moment. It is just the costs and burdens involved are enormous, as many of you I'm sure know, making it impossible. Now, that is obviously very much a principle, and we appreciate and accept, as do the many supporting MPs of the bill, that the detail is complex and that this is indeed a major reform that we are talking about here. That's what we intend. But if you were to look at the bill itself right now, it is not a long bill. It's about 1.5 pages, and it does not have all the detail in it that is required ultimately for a new law to make sure that the principles I've just described are actually delivered and properly established. There is a balance to be struck in how explicit a new law is on giving Ofgem the duty and setting up the process, and how much it allows Ofgem to set up that process, how much kind of leeway it gives to Ofgem to set up that process. The bill at the moment requires Ofgem to fully consult with all stakeholders, but that's pretty standard. I'll talk just a bit more about the support we've got in the campaign to date, and then I'll talk about our future plans, which kind of will cover off more of that aspect of the detail. So as I said, bills recently been reintroduced in Parliament. It was in Parliament last year as a type of bill called the presentation bill. Those kinds of bills get no time. They don't proceed into law, but it's a great tool to get more MPs backing it. So last year it got 116 MPs backing it from a broad cross-party support. It's now introduced as a type of bill called a 10-minute rule bill. It's another type of backbencher bill. It won't receive time. Plan is not for it to become law this year. It's another great tool to get it more profile in Parliament and indeed, potentially in the media and so on. There are to date nearly 200. It's about 190. I don't know the exact number, but I think it's about 190 MPs now who are backing it. Broad cross-party support. So it's really encouraging growth in support that we're seeing. The public support is also essential, and the only reason that all those MPs have already said they back it is because of the grassroots and the public support we've had. So indeed, if you have signed up to the campaign and you have been lobbying your MP to back the bill, then thank you very much, because it has been your efforts that has seen this great and strong and encouraging increase in parliamentary support that we now have. So thank you. I emphasize that very much. If you individually, or indeed your group, hasn't yet signed up to the campaign to support the bill, please do so. You can do so on our website, powerforpeople.org. That's all letters. So yeah, please do that. The more people that come on board, the more we can help you, encourage you to lobby your MPs, and the greater our chance of success. So please do come on board. We also have been getting councils to back the bill. There's over 300 parish, town, community councils across Britain now backing it. Who've made formal resolutions. 44 local and county authorities have passed resolutions supporting the bill. So it's encouraging. I suspect we'll see a lot more once they're able to meet. They obviously had a backlog of decisions because of the inability to meet, but probably another 40 or so where the leaders of the council have contacted me saying they want to back it. So this is great. Really good growth and support. Over 40 national organisations. A lot of the sort of typical big ones you'd expect, like Friends of the Earth and Greenpeace and WWF, the RSPB, etc. Great to have Electricity Northwest backing the bill and asking MPs across the Northwest region to back it. So thank you very much, Electricity Northwest. Appreciate that very much. Northern Powergrid, it'd be great to talk to you about possibly backing it. So yeah, really good support. Please come on board. Please help. Finally, the plan for the future. We're going to need well over half the House of Commons to support this if we are to succeed. So that's around about well over the 325 MPs, more like 400. So we're not there yet. We're nowhere near there yet. Maybe next year, maybe. We just need to keep growing.
To cut you off, I'm afraid. We have to be strict about time. But I think
Sure,
everybody
all right.
got a really good picture on that. And the message is clear. Please get your MPs to support the local electricity bill. If we've got something there, then we can reform it. We can make it better. And it's grabbing people's attention. So help us grab more. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass on now hurriedly to Ollie Pendered from Community Energy South, who will be talking to us about community energy pathways, mentoring new groups. Ollie.
Thanks very much, Duncan. Steve, go for it. I think you're doing a great job, and right behind you there on all you're doing. That, you know, getting those ministers on side is so important. It's such a big part of what we do for Community Energy England. So
4.5 minutes.
Can you see my screen, Duncan?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, very good. So listen, I'm going to talk about 4 things, okay, which have inspired me over the last 4 weeks and kind of relate to the work that Community Energy South are doing as a regional group. Pathways and mentoring, work that we do and why we do it. I've been thinking, Saeed talked about 2 weeks ago, the London Community Energy Fund, and I'm going to mention that. Partnerships and entering new markets, which is something we do with Riding Sunbeams, and a thought for schools. So hopefully you can see my slide, and I'll put it onto this. So for me, all the time, you know, the face of community energy is really important. And, you know, these last 2 weeks, it's been full on for all of us. We've had this lovely, rich information coming through and sharing. And we run masterclasses in Community Energy South. We've had people from across the country joining those about local authorities and about share offers. And it's been great, you know, talking to Kate in Manchester and other people from across the country. You know, it's been really good connecting with people out of the area. And the vision that Community Energy England have put forward, you know, I'm thinking about this a lot now, 20 times larger in by 2030 and what that means for us. So going back a little bit, in 2012, Community Energy South ran a peer mentoring scheme for 12 new groups, kind of taking the learning of a BHESCo, and then Brighton Energy Co-op was just up and running, and sharing that with 12 other groups. Now those groups now are really rocketing, all of them, and covering, we do faith and power projects in the Southeast, energy champion awareness projects, and community energy projects. Now, taking that into mind, the peer mentoring scheme that we did, we've been working with Essex County Council, where there are no community energy groups, running a peer mentoring scheme, and hope to get to the stage with them very shortly, where they launch a seed corn fund for new groups, and we can carry on mentoring them and getting them set up. And we've just launched, we've had the kickoff to work with the South Downs National Park and set up new groups there. Now, everything that's happening with, you know, before we went into lockdown with COVID, a lot of the local authorities outside of London and around did their climate emergencies and their commitments to net zero. And I think that's something they're picking up coming outside of the coronavirus and getting the economy back up and running. So we're really excited on working with these two councils and another Southeast local authority soon to be announced. So hopefully there we'll be setting up new groups and community energy groups and mentoring them. Also, I've been thinking, as Saeed talked about the community fund in London, and there's other funds across the region, and we're looking at one around Brighton. So around Brighton and Lewis, there are 8 groups that are up and running. They've got 120 projects plus between them, £6.6 million in equity. You know, it's a real success story for community energy. And we're looking to see how a carbon offset fund could be linked to a regional community fund. It doesn't quite work the same in London as it does outside in the regional areas. So that's something that we picked up over the last couple of weeks. Now, some of you may know Community Energy South is very lucky to have been involved with the setup of Riding Sunbeams with Possible. And we are now having in-depth conversations and have been having for 3 years now with Network Rail and with Transport and the DFT. And opening up these partnerships with new markets is a real focus, I think, and opportunity for community energy. Schools, right. Yeah, okay, thanks. With community energy schools, look, these are the schools in the Southeast. There's actually more of that since the extension of the FITs. But my lasting thought on that is inclusion in community energy. And I'm challenging the board at BHESCo to set up a junior BHESCo and what that looks like. So that's a bit of fun we're having with young people. A little bit of information about Community Energy South on the slide decks if you share them, and please do get in contact. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ollie. That's brilliant. And with that, say again.
I stuck to time, did I?
Did, yes, thank you. Passing on to Kayla Ente from BHESCo in Brighton and Hove, talking on the pathway to net zero. Kayla. Oh, we can't hear you. Try again.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. I just want to share this right now with everyone because for me it typifies what we're facing here with our climate emergency. Our older generation is responsible for a lot of what we're facing right now, and it's really up to us to tackle this. 274 local authorities across the country, or 67%, have declared climate emergencies, but most of them don't have a strategy for how they're going to implement their target. And one of the biggest problems that we face as a nation is that 80% of our buildings already exist. And a lot of the local plans that are already drafted don't address these poorly insulated buildings and how we're going to do these retrofits. Even though retrofits have been identified now by the government as being a way to stimulate the economy and create new jobs, I really do hope that the government does latch onto this and provide funding to groups like community energy groups so we can create more fairness and equity in the energy market. The new Green Deal, which has been the Green New Deal, which has been touted as the hope for the future, really doesn't have a chance unless local authorities work with their local community energy groups and the experts that are working on the ground to create more equity in the energy industry. So the issue for us is, as an organization, is we want to work in partnership to really drive forward our pathway to net zero. And this means partnerships, and it means really taking on these partnerships very seriously, like with the DNOs. So it was really interesting to hear today the position of the DNOs, and I think that Helen was absolutely right to say that it's up to community energy groups to work with the DNOs, because we're the ones that are going to be able to create the atmosphere, the situation in communities, working with microgrids and working with the local communities to lower the costs of reinforcing infrastructure in the networks, to create more affordable energy, because we all know that the cost of reinforcing the network is just going to be passed on to the customer. So my message really today is that we need to work in partnership. We all need to help each other. Those with more experience, like BHESCo, we've been trading for 5 years now. We've got £1.2 million in assets that are under management already, and we're hoping to grow to a £40 million company in the next 5 years. So really what we need to do is address this aggressive growth and work together to see if we could really make a change and move from our current position, like Steve just said, of 300 megawatts up to the gigawatts of power that we need. That's my message.
Thank you, Kayla. That's a very inspiring message. Good luck with getting to 40 million, and all of us for localizing and working with our DNOs on local area energy planning. That's a really good proposal. Thank you. Moving on, next speaker is Rebecca Lawson from PowerPaired, talking about PowerPaired, giving us a PowerPaired update, connecting community energy groups and asset owners. Rebecca.
Hi, John. Are you able to share the slides I sent, or do I need to share my screen? Sorry.
You can share your screen. It might be quicker than me rooting them out, but I can if you need me to.
Okay, hang on. Let me just quickly share my screen, hopefully. Okay. Can everybody hopefully see those?
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to give you a quick update. For those who haven't heard of PowerPaired before, it's a project that Forum for the Future has been working on for the last 3 years to develop a matchmaking service to increase the number of partnerships that are happening between asset owners and community energy groups looking for sites. Our vision is that we can utilise many more assets that currently could have renewable energy projects or be hosting community energy projects, and to bring groups and asset owners together to get those projects happening. To do that, we've developed a digital platform that is essentially capable of matchmaking groups, so creating a database of sites with asset owners who are willing to explore having partnerships with community energy groups that's easily searchable by postcode, and bringing the two together and starting those conversations to happen. The platform and the site also has comprehensive information for both groups to help them understand what's involved in developing a community energy project. And part of our kind of aspiration is to increase understanding in asset owners of what community energy groups are doing, what projects look like, and in doing so, hopefully bring more of them forward to work with community energy groups. We've partnered with other organisations on the project so that as part of the platform, we've got support available through Pure Leapfrog. We're just about to complete an upgrade to the website so that there will be freely available legal templates and guidance documents for a variety of different community energy projects. That will hopefully make it more easy and quicker for projects to get off the ground if a site was taken forward from PowerPaired. And this is what the platform looks like. Just as a reminder, it's free to use for community energy groups, free to register. It only takes 5 minutes. Quick register with some basic details in order to be able to use it. There's no cost whatsoever involved. So just showing you here. is literally all the information that is required. And then I just wanted to give an update. We've got over 100 assets, over 35 different asset owners, and nearly 100 community energy groups currently registered with the platform. The activities that we've been working on in 2020 so far have been looking at improving the website to increase functionality, so exploring how we can fix bugs that have arisen as the platform's gone along, but also how we can improve the platform to make it easier for asset owners to understand where community energy groups are actively looking for sites and what kind of projects they're looking for. So that's something we're exploring at the moment. We've been continuing to do outreach to asset owners, utilising a number of different relationships that we've built up, for example, through local energy hubs. We're actively seeking matches for projects on the platform with outreach to community energy groups. So we've mapped where we've got assets, where we've got groups, and where we would like groups to come forward and register to hopefully explore those assets. And we're also trying to develop a strategy for where we've got assets in community energy black spots, which is where we've been really interested in hearing the work that Ollie and Community Energy South are doing to bring forward new groups and mentor them, because we've got a number of areas where we've got assets, but there's actually been no match made because we haven't got active community energy groups there. So that's something we're continuing to explore. We're looking at how to use data sets and data solutions to increase the speed of identifying potential assets, working through the Eastern Energy project that's going on at the moment. And we're developing regionally focused outreach strategy and partnerships for the platform going forward so that we can drive increased number of assets being uploaded outside of England in the other regions of the United Kingdom. And then at the same time, we are gathering case studies, generating thought leadership pieces, and putting together regular newsletters to try and build up a picture of the type of projects, the success and the benefits that we can then use to engage asset owners when we're looking to recruit more assets for the site. And to that end, the last thing I just wanted to flag up was that we're currently running a survey that's running until the 23rd of July to help us better understand the kind of assets and areas in which community energy groups are actively looking for projects right now. We've sent this out through our own mailing list and it's going out in the Community Energy England newsletter, but I've also put the link in these slides. If you had just 5 minutes to quickly answer, I think there's 10 questions to help us target our outreach to asset owners and bring forward the right kind of sites in the right kind of areas, that would be enormously helpful. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Yes, that very much speaks to, I mean, assets are local, even if their ownership isn't always, so it's a really good way in, a good tool to doing strategic local area energy planning. Moving swiftly on to Richard Lane from the Carbon Co-op, talking about the amazing people-powered retrofit about energy efficiency, which Colin and Kayla both spoke potently to. Richard.
Hello there. Hi. Okay, let me share screen. Okay, hopefully you can see that. I can't, for some reason, Google Slides isn't letting me go into presenter mode, so you're going to have to look at my address bar there as well. But yes, not just people-powered retrofit, because we've got a whole load of things going on that I'd like to update you about. A lot of you will have heard of these. So yeah, this is our sort of where we stand at the moment. We're running this Power Shaper trial, which is an open demand-side response based on open standards. We are currently recruiting at the moment. That's quite exciting. So if you live in Manchester or York and I haven't already bent your ear about it, you can sign up to have control assets in your house. If you've got a motion tank, electric vehicle, and or storage heater and a smart meter, then we can come. I've actually got one of these just arrived this week. This is the gubbins that we'll be putting in houses soon, if you can see that in the webcam view rather than the slide share. Yeah, so that's going on. That's a BHESCo funded trial, and it's going to carry on. We're linking into a project that you may have heard about and mentioned in the first part of the Community Energy England conference, which is being run with ResCoop, so partners across Europe, as a community VPP project. We are looking at data co-op. This is one of the next gen projects. You've heard a few mentions of the next gen project today. We're looking at energy services, so how services built on energy data. So it kind of links in with retrofit and generation and so on. But we're looking at kind of replicable models for energy services that can be based on data, and how you can responsibly manage that energy data, and that could be something that communities have a role in. Managing the energy data and warehousing that data on behalf of their members. People-powered retrofit, as you said, the famous thing, that of course has been very heavily affected by coronavirus. So that has pretty much been paused. We're just starting up again now. We've taken a lot of that online. So we've got quite a good and something that's been very successful for us, this webinar series. I've put the link in there. And if you're interested in how it's been going and the reflections of it, we've been doing it 5 years now. Retrofit, back to the community New Deal. So we've got a webinar that reviews 5 years of retrofit experience. That's 1st July 6 p.m. There's also some others there you might be interested in. 11th June got a mention earlier on in connection with its mosque. We've been there as well. We have a targeted place-based scheme where we're looking at insulation retrofit in that area because it is quite a deprived area of Manchester. We also, our Jonathan, who many of you all know, presented at the UK Climate Assembly, this sort of national kind of advisory citizens council that's been put together as part of the response to the climate emergency declaration. So that was quite an experience as well. That is, I won't go on unless anyone's got any specific questions, because I think we're pressed for time, aren't we? And I'm sure a lot of other people have got things to add. So I'll stop there.
Thanks very much, Richard. That was very concise of a very important series of initiatives. So moving on now to Graham Ayling from the Energy Saving Trust and EU Heroes, talking about community solar, a bright future, perspectives from across Europe. Over to you, Graham. We can't hear you or see you, Graham.
Yeah, sorry, I'm unmuted now. It's a very quick gallop through the European funded work that we've been doing on community solar. We ran a webinar on this a little bit earlier in the week, and we've got another couple coming up actually that are EU level webinars. So this project was about network connection of community PV, aiming to increase the deployment, particularly in grid constrained areas. So it was about understanding the needs of communities and network operators, and then the impact of that on the business model for community solar. Combined with that, there was some gathering of real world data on solar performance and the kind of supply and demand matchup, and also some piloting of those models. In the UK, we work particularly in Wales, and Dan McCallum, who's on the, I noticed is in the session today, has been really helpful with that. Thank you, Dan. And it's Horizon 2020, EU funded across 7 countries, led by Netherlands, but also including Germany, Spain, Greece, Lithuania, and Poland. So a really interesting mix of countries with quite well-developed community energy sector, some less so, some with very well-developed kind of high penetration of PV into the grid, again, some less so. So it gave us a really good flavour of what's going on across the whole of the EU. So one quick thing to flag, I'm sure many of you are aware of this already, but within the EU Renewable Energy Directive, there has been this Article 22 introduced, which is basically enshrining the right of people to set up renewable energy communities. So this is basically enshrining the right for community energy and for community energy specifically to be treated fairly in markets, which I'm sure many of you will feel is very important. And I think, obviously, UK leaving EU and everything, but it's a huge opportunity for us to share with Europe and to learn from them. And I think that's something that's come out of this project for us, has been, we've found that actually there's quite a lot to share in the UK, and some of what you've been hearing about today, things like the work that's been done by Regen and some of the DNOs around communication between communities and DNOs, some of the innovation around things like riding sunbeams and those kinds of things, and actually some of the work that we've been involved with Welsh and Scottish governments on supporting community energy, all useful stuff for countries across Europe who are now all implementing this part of the directive, which includes setting up a supportive framework for community energy. So some really interesting stuff going on there, and we'll be covering that a little bit more in our upcoming webinars, which are on the 1st, so this week, and then the 8th and the 15th of July. The first one is a kind of overview of the project. The one on the 8th focuses in on the policy side of things, and then the one on the 15th is more about kind of innovative applications of community PV and the practicalities of actually delivering projects. So I think, I mean, some of what the project has found is stuff that won't be news to any of you, about the importance of on-site utilization and this idea of kind of power purchase agreements to deliver on-site generation as a kind of immediate term solution. But I guess some things that might be useful that are coming out of that, I think we've kind of looked forward to say, you know, power purchase agreements really important right now, but actually how do we move towards things like, well, what we've just heard about with the local energy bill, really, and some interesting examples from other countries, Greece and Lithuania and various other places starting to look at virtual net metering for community projects. So some really useful exchange to be done there. I will wrap up, but I would just flag euheroes.eu is the website there. You can find out more information about the webinars. You can register for the webinars there. We're also, there's some case study stuff there, and we're going to be, the project is kind of coming towards its end now, so there'll be lots of outputs from the project going on there. And the last thing to flag is the tool that we have, which is, it's just an Excel-based tool for understanding the business model of PV, for community PV, that we developed for use in the project. So it's actually to kind of work across lots of European countries. But we think it could be useful to communities that are thinking about a PV project. So we've made that available, free to use, funded by the project. So if anyone wants to use that, then feel free. And we will link with Community Energy England to make sure that there are links through from CEE to reach that, but it's available on the website now. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham. That's very inspiring. I think we might have a webinar clash in this world of webinars on the 1st of July, but we will try and put links to the webinars assembled in a chat at the end and circulate them. But if anybody has key links related to the presentations, not just whatever you feel like, and I want to repost them in the chat at the end, that might be of interest to attenders. So now, moving on to Tom de Simone from York Community Energy. Houses fit for the future. Tom.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just share the screen. Hopefully you can all see that.
Yes.
Lovely. Okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to go quickly over what we've been up to recently at York Community Energy. Obviously, we've had a bit of a change of tack due to the demise of the FITs. So we've been kind of looking more into housing and specifically kind of retrofit, so insulation and that kind of thing. So just a few of our activities. So we've created this project called Warmer Homes York. And it's basically just about helping the people of York make their homes, you know, greener and cheaper to heat with, you know, usually with insulation, basically. So we've set up a section on our website where people can go, they can get all kinds of tips. And there's kind of different levels of information according to, because everyone has sort of different level of ambition. Some people just want quick and cheap measures. Some people want to go for like a deep retrofits. There's kind of graduated advice on there. Things we've been out doing home energy assessments, so looking at people's houses and telling them what they could do to improve the energy efficiency of their home. We have been out with our thermal imaging camera and finding sort of, thermal leaks in people's houses. And you can see an example over here, particularly bad one, where somebody had a loft conversion done, and it was just a bad job basically, and the builders just didn't put any insulation back at the end, so that was lovely. And then in addition to that, so we've been working with Carbon Co-op, and we had Anika from Carbon Co-op who very kindly came over and gave us some training on how to deliver a draft proofing workshop. And then she kind of set us loose on the general public the same afternoon, so that was exciting. Which actually went better than expected. And then in addition to that, we've been doing the occasional housewarming party, as we like to call it, which is where a bunch of volunteers come around to your house, and it's basically like we all work together to do like a DIY retrofit, just, usually on one room of the house, and, under expert professional guidance, all work together. And so in this example, we insulated the under a suspended timber floor, so that was quite fun. And obviously with the winter months coming, we hope to be doing lots more thermal imaging, if the guidelines allow, obviously, because that's proved to be quite a popular service. And then, yes, so last Friday we had an event of our own for Community Energy Fortnight, which was more of a kind of event for the general public, really, and particularly people in York, but which was just kind of our take on what do we need to do to build back better with a green recovery following the pandemic. And so we talked about the kind of the building regulations and things for new build homes and how they could be a lot more ambitious. And also we looked at it as well, which is subject close to our hearts, and how, the government could invest in retrofit. There's a whole supply chain there that needs developing, there's funding that needs doing across the country. And we kind of had an audience participation segment as well, where we just sort of got a general discussion going. And as we always find at these events, people are just really keen to get on with retrofitting their own homes, but they don't know where to start, or they haven't got the support, or they just haven't got the money to do it, because it can be a really expensive thing. So our kind of key takeaway from it was, let's get some funding, and let's let's get some proper support for kind of grassroots projects like the Carbon Co-op's people powered retrofit. Let's get one of those in every town, basically. And then finally, I just wanted to talk quickly about, we've already had one game mentioned today, and there's another one that you might have heard of from Possible called Carbon City Zero, and I backed the Kickstarter. I've played it, it's quite fun, and then just in time for the lockdown, they've made an online version on a site called Tabletopia. So it's a fun little game. It's quick to play. And it's, it can help you sort of start a conversation with people about what we need to do to transition to zero carbon cities. So, if anybody would like any help on, like a little tutorial on how to play it, or how to get set up with Tabletopia, or if you already know how to play and you just want a game, contact details are there at the bottom, or just, hit me up in the chat or whatever. Yeah, be glad to help. And that's it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tom. And running about 5 minutes late, but that's still pretty miraculous. Thank you, everybody. Over to Matthew Clayton from Thrive Renewables on funding community energy, which pretty well covers what we need to know. Matthew.
Hello, thank you very much. So I'm Matthew Clayton, Managing Director of Thrive Renewables. I'm conscious this isn't something I've said lately, but I'm standing between you and the pub, or the virtual pub anyway. So so we'll be quick as we can. If I can work out how to scroll through this. There we go. So just a few reflections really on what's been a fascinating couple of weeks of webinars and discussion and conversation. I mean, the thing that really resounds with me is that we're really pleased to have sponsored the Community Energy Fortnight, because so much of what Community Energy is trying to achieve is parallel with what we're trying to achieve, in that we too want to widen the ownership of renewables and deliver new projects, deliver change, and the all important transition. So yeah, so that's just one reflection. The other one, I guess, is just to, I don't know how many of you were able to share in the workshop that we had on funding renewable energy projects or community energy projects, which was last Tuesday or Tuesday week. But that's available on Thrive's YouTube channel. So if you do want to have a look at that, yeah, then feel free. Huge thanks to John from the Energy Hub, who was able to provide a lot of insight on early stage funding for renewables, and to John and Annette from Energy for All for sharing some of the inspirational stories of just what's been achieved at so many levels by community energy with Energy for All, and also Monica for providing some really practical advice on how it looks from a funder's perspective and how we're here to help and work collaboratively and flexibly with projects. Yeah, so I guess the key takeaways I had from that session was that, yeah, the energy hubs are available at that front end, which is obviously often the neglected space for funding. So do have a word with your local energy hub and find out more about that. Yeah, the creativity and the delivery of the community energy sector never ceases to impress and inspire me personally. So it's great to see some active examples of that. And also what I found really helpful, just looking through the participation lists and also some of the speakers over the last couple of weeks, it's been really good to see the local authorities being very heavily represented in a lot of this. And I think that's really important, because for us, investment is a bit of an exclusive club, be it through bonds or through shares in these projects. But what better way to deliver value throughout the community than having your local authority involved, either saving money on their power purchase or receiving dividends from a scheme that they co-own or something like that. So really pleased to see the local authorities as part of that. So in terms of the sort of wrap up, if you like, as we're reaching the end of Community Energy Fortnight, I think that what's absolutely transparent and embedded in pretty much everyone involved in this space is that imperative of taking people with us. The scale of the change which needs to happen if we're going to get anywhere near net zero, let alone beyond that to proper zero, just requires us to take everyone with us. And I think that the community energy space is where that journey starts, really. So feeling really happy to be part of this. The other things that are making me feel quite optimistic at the moment are, which has already been touched on, 65% of local authorities declaring their climate emergency. And whilst there's some obvious lack of planning in what that actually means for people, there's a real push, I think, and to fulfill some of those plans, or to create some of those plans, and a real acknowledgement of building back better than we were before. So that makes me feel happy. The other thing is we've just done some number crunching at this end from the National Planning Database, and we've looked at what the planning situation for renewables has been since the beginning of 2019. So so since January 2019, 276 onshore renewable energy projects, and by that I mean wind, solar and hydro, have submitted planning submissions in the UK. In that same 15-month period, 182 onshore renewable electricity projects secured consent, which is obviously an important part of the journey. And of those 45 projects, and of these, so of the 182, 45 of those projects were of a capacity below 30 megawatts, which is important for our sector, I think. So sub-utility scale, effectively. And just back of the fag packet calculation, that would require 350 million of capital to get those projects built. So there's still work to be done. There's still stuff we can do as a sector. And I feel that the community space is still active. It's still working, despite an element of paralysis in the more traditional space. But while those figures sound really big, if we're going to achieve net zero, we need to have got a critical mass of renewables by 2035, And to do that, we need to be building that what went through planning in the last 15 months needs to be tripled annually to get job done. So I don't think we can take our foot off the gas just yet. And yeah, I'd just like to thank everyone for everything they're doing. I'm optimistic that the FIT CFD consultation will come out with something for onshore renewables, which I hope will open the gates for the projects that a lot of people here are involved with, and provide that stability and certainty to allow individuals to continue to participate in generation. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That was, Matthew, that was a wonderful summary. I almost don't need to say anything now. So I won't say much other than to say, yes, I am astonished all the time by the dynamism and the determination and the innovation of our sector, our will to grow. And as our community energy vision is of a growth of possible growth of between 12 and 20 times, then quite right, we need to keep our foot on the gas and look for opportunities wherever possible. But none of that will happen without support. So we also need to keep our foot on the gas of convincing the government that they can't do it without the people and communities. We are the best way of taking those people forward, and that local is where it's at on so many fronts in the energy field. Only 9% of people want a return to business as usual. So change is in the air. There's everything to play for. And I would like to finally thank everybody for their amazing timekeeping, and to thank you all for being here, and to thank Northern Powergrid, Electricity Northwest and the Co-op Community Energy for sponsoring the conferences, and Thrive Renewables for sponsoring the Community Energy Fortnight. We will send around a follow-up email with links and details of how you can catch up on what you missed through the fortnight to all delegates. Please do fill out Colin and Rebecca's surveys. We will try and put links to that in those in the follow-up email. Play the What's the Deal game and the one that Tom mentioned, which I can't quite remember. Join the Co-op, Carbon Co-op and EU Heroes webinars, and have an amazing 2020 and 2021. We will set up a virtual coffee morning soon to do the things that happen in the cracks of conferences, which are usually so valuable. We won't be closing down the meeting instantly, so if there's anybody you've seen who you want to personally message in the chat, please do so. Again, thank you all for contributing and attending, and for all you do, and see you again soon out there. Thanks. Bye-bye.